This week the team are back in action and we've some beauties for you. You'll see vegetables, herbs and flowers grown indoors hydroponically. Do you wheeze, sneeze or itch when you're in the garden? Which plants cause allergic reactions? And you'll see some easily made garden tools designed for people with disabilities or anyone. Hello, welcome to the programme and we're all raring to go. And we're going to start off by looking very closely at one of the most fascinating of all plants, the elkhorn ferns. But how do you grow them or divide them or even mount them? Look, it's dead easy when you know how.
The elkhorns are superb garden plants. They're specialised ferns called epiphytes. This means that they live on trees, and live on is important. They don't take anything away from the tree, they only use it for support. But put them on a tree in your garden in a place where they will get some shade from the direct summer sun. Give them regular watering, not daily, that might cause them to rot, and they will thrive. So much so that this particular fern, which was put on this tree a mere 6 years ago, is now big enough to divide. Now what you need for this job is to put your heart in your mouth and a good sharp knife in your hand. It's a little bit crude, but don't worry, it won't hurt the plant too much. We've got one nice little segment here. Well, that's the elkhorn fern, and now you can see how unusual and different it is. Let's just take this small area at the bottom here. It has two distinct types of fronds or leaves. The clasping one, this one here, over the back, is sterile, and what that does is grip the plant onto whatever you choose to put it on. And these longer fronds, which arch down and produce the spores on the end, they are the fertile ones, the ones that give the fern its very good appearance. And so on this division we've actually got two small elkhorn ferns. Now we can either keep them as one, or we can make another division by simply cutting across here. Well, in this case I'm going to leave it entire, but the question now is, what do I mount this particular elkhorn on? And the answer is a wide range of materials, actually. Hardwood is probably the best known. This is just a piece of local hardwood here, and it mounts onto there beautifully indeed. Or one of the favourites, which looks very nice in a garden situation, is something like a slab of tree fern trunk here. As long as you're not destroying tree ferns to get this, then it's very suitable. And note the hook in the top. It's got to be very securely attached because these ferns get to be very heavy, and that is going to have to carry a great deal of weight. Okay, let's put it onto this one in this particular case. It will look beaut, I can assure you. And to do that, we simply place the fern in position the right way up, by the way. It's very important, on there. And then take a look at the way the fern is sitting. Let me show you that if you look at this plant sideways, you've got the two distinct leaves. These top leaves lean out and they catch debris falling from the tree or whatever, and that's what gives them their nutrition. If they don't lean out, then you need to pack the back with a bit of sphagnum moss, or a lot of sphagnum moss, or compost. It doesn't really matter, but it shouldn't be too rich. It should only be there to hold moisture rather than anything else. Now what we need to do is to hold that plant on the board long enough for it to form its own root system. A variety of ways of doing that. Wire is probably the most common, but don't use your normal garden wire. It won't last long enough. What you need to use is a longer lasting wire, like either a galvanized one, or what I'm going to use in this particular case, a piece of copper wire. The new base fronds will come out and cover the wire quite quickly. You need to thread it through. There we go, it should be coming out somewhere on the other end. Right underneath on the back of the board. You might need an assistant to help you hold it in this particular case. Let's turn it over that way, put the wire on and tie it as tightly as you possibly can, and if necessary twitch it with a pair of pliers too. Now you might have to do that once or twice, but basically the fern is now roughly held in position. Note the nice sloping out part of the base leaves there, and this fern is going to be very happy indeed. There are other places you can put ferns like this. Back on the tree, for instance, where it came from, or onto another tree, but choose one that has a permanent bark. No good using a tree that has deciduous bark. The bark falls off, the fern falls with it. Here's one way of attaching it. Don't wrap a wire right around the trunk, incidentally. Put a couple of nails in the edge, a piece of copper wire, put your fern up there, and simply pull that wire around over and attach it back firmly to the other nail. There's an even simpler method, and it's awful. Use a galvanised nail with a big washer and simply hammer it into position.
This is a typical business, or is it? The office actually has got a garden in it, and that's something a little bit different, isn't it? It's because Fred Fennell is very interested in growing plants hydroponically, which simply means growing plants without any soil around them. It's a great way to go. Hello, Fred.
Hi, Jane.
Come over and tell us about what this is all about. It's a really fascinating way to grow plants.
It's a great way to grow plants.
Yeah. Of course, all plants, whether they be grown outside or inside, they do need basic things though, don't they?
Yes, they need water, mineral salts, warmth and light.
Yeah, okay.
We provide these in hydroponics, and mineral salts, we have them in powder form, which we dissolve in water, and this makes our mineral water.
That's just the food for the plants?
That's the food for the
plant.
plant.
Okay, that looks pretty
Right.
easy. Now, to get them started, obviously they have to start in something, you know, how to get the seeds or the cuttings going.
Yes, we normally start them in the little grow wool propagating blocks, and we can put cuttings or seeds in those, and when the roots protrude from them, we can then go on to...
This looks exactly like the stuff, you know, that you put the rock wool, that you put the insulation in.
Very, very similar. It's called grow wool. It's specifically made for growing.
This looks a good one though. I know that some people who can find that will find that a beaut way to grow.
Good old scoria, the cheapest and the best.
Good. And this one's light and fluffy.
That's right, that's a volcanic glass called perlite, and then we have our vermiculite, which is a mica type material, also good for growing.
So all the plants can grow in any of those kind of
Any
situations.
of those things.
As long as they have light, if you're doing it in your, like in your office.
In our office, we've got to provide supplementary lighting with a grow light.
Easy
That's
way
all
to
they
go.
need.
Yeah. Now there's another way that they can grow also. It's by growing them in troughs in water with the nutrient in it.
That's right, and we warm the water to about approximately 25 degrees Celsius with an aquarium heater, and then we have a little fountain pump just circulating the water around.
So the whole
And that's
thing's just
all
being
the-
recycled.
That's all there is to it.
It's easy, isn't
Simple.
it? Now, the type... Oh, well then hang on, the troughs that they're growing in though, that's just PVC and anyone can get PVC.
PVC downpipe,
And how do you make the holes, Fred?
just with a hole saw. Everybody's got a hole saw.
Well, I haven't, but I guess
Well,
I
you
could
can
do
get
it.
one.
Yes, that sounds pretty easy. Now, it amazes me the variety of plants you've got here. You start off with spinach, the old vegetable, that looks like ready to eat.
It is ready to eat.
Terrific.
You don't even need to cook it, just eat it raw.
You move on, you've got
feverfew, parsley.
the lovely eau de cologne
yes,
mint.
Yes, good for tea. Lettuce, the red lettuce, green lettuce.
Those are
Flowers,
beautiful
aren't they lovely?
flowers. That's amazing you can get flowers like
Right,
that in the
yeah.
hydroponic system, isn't
You
it?
can get anything in a hydroponic system.
Well, take a look at this green lettuce. Now look at that. That is astounding. How long's that been there like that for?
3 weeks.
God, that's fantastic growth, isn't it?
Yes.
Gee. Now, this is a really good system, Fred, but I know that there's a good way for amateurs to grow. What I've done here is take an indoor plant, washed it completely of all the soil around the roots, and I'm just going to put that into that pot there like that, and then with any inert material, but using clay pebbles like those, I'm just going to put that in to stabilise the plant into the pot, and then by feeding it with nutrient solution and a bit of water, mixed into the water actually, that plant will do very well. That's a very easy system.
That plant will grow equally as good as in any other system.
Yeah, it's good, isn't
Yep,
it?
very good.
And of course, if people want to learn more, they can go and join a hydroponic society. There's people like yourself who's, you know, really enthusiastic. You'll help them, won't you?
Of course it will.
Now have a look at this, Fred. That's ready to harvest, eh?
Yes, Jane, one crop out and the next crop in. You can't get easier than that.
It's a great way to grow.
Someone's certainly been doing a lot of work here, and it looks good. This nice bark mulch around the garden and this lovely new path. It looks old, but it's new. But all of this has created a lot of stress on this tree. The building work that's been happening, the cutting through the roots to lay this path, and the removal of a tree that used to be here has caused this tree to have a problem. This chewed bark and webbing indicates that there's a borer in this tree, and borers usually only attack a tree when it's under stress. What you've got to do now is take a sharp knife and take all this away and see if you can find the entry hole of the borer. You might have a bit of a job to locate it, but when you do, just get some wire and poke it down the hole and kill the borer if it's still there. The important thing is that if you look after your trees, they're less likely to get borer.
Achoo! 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 You know, there are lots of plants in the garden that will make you sneeze and cause rashes to develop. But you don't have to be as dramatic as I've been and cut them out. Let's talk to one of the experts about allergies and rashes in the garden.
Well, the symptoms are mostly running and sneezing and itching, running of eyes, sometimes itching the roof of the mouth, and it generally comes on quite acutely at a particular time of year. But on the other hand, you can have an ongoing problem because up here in Queensland, for instance, there are grasses all the time and it can just be a continuing process. They often think they just keep on getting colds or they've always got a cold. They don't realise that it's an allergy.
Doctor, are garden plants the major culprits in this business of rashes and allergies?
Well, grass is really the major culprit in breathing in allergies. Not so much in rashes, of course, but it's often particular plants in the garden that are the cause of the rashes.
This is a beautiful tree, particularly in the autumn when it gets those beautiful autumn tonings. But unfortunately, it's got a few problems, particularly if you're a gardener who's susceptible to the rash from the rust tree, because this is one of the rust family, and a lot of people can find they get quite serious rash from it. If you've got one and you don't want to get that rash, the only thing you can do is take off any of these low-hanging branches that are likely to rub against you. That way you eliminate the problem. Here's another one on the wanted list. This is a Dieffenbachia. It's commonly called dumb cane, and the reason it's got that name is if you get some of the sap on your tongue, it'll all swell up and you'll never be able to speak for months. Maybe never again. Certainly not the thing for a Gardening Australia presenter. When somebody suspects they've got an allergy, what's the first step?
Well, if it's particularly of a breathing in allergy, then there are various antihistamines that will help, and the first thing to do, I think, would be to go to the pharmacist. If what the pharmacist suggests isn't sufficient, then the next stop is your family doctor, because there are other things on prescription that are very effective. Rashes, of course, I think you really do need to go to a specialist for that.
Yet another plant on the wanted list, the philodendron. The philodendrons have a sap which can be extremely irritating for people with sensitive skins. So do watch out. If you're pruning a philodendron, watch out for that sap. It just about makes me cry to have to say this, but the sap of the mango tree can be quite irritating to some people with sensitive skins. So I guess if you've got a mango tree and you're one of those people, don't chop it out. Get someone in to help you pick the fruit and then send them all to me. Here's a plant that's common in a lot of Australia. It grows from the warm temperate areas right through the tropics. It's called naked lady simply because it doesn't have any leaves, but it's one of the real nasties in this whole business. The sap of this plant is terribly irritating, so watch out for it. It's a member of the euphorbia family, and a lot of the euphorbias have got this irritant sap. So keep your eye open if you've got a naked lady in your garden. If you find you've got a problem plant in the garden, Doctor, what are your alternatives? What's the gardener's alternatives?
Well, I think either to move it out of the way if it's overhanging a path, or even perhaps cutting it back. May help, but if you've got a contact allergy from a plant and you keep brushing against it, you're going to have constant trouble. So you've got to really move it away from where there's going to be movement in the garden.
So you wouldn't advise then for gardeners to go around willy-nilly pulling out all their plants, ripping them out?
Oh no, not at all. But on the other hand, that some plants really just do have to be moved, and you have to accept that if you develop a contact allergy. If it's a breathing in one, well, no, you don't have to rip them out. We don't want anybody to rip out their garden.
Well, as you can see, it pays to treat your plants with the greatest respect. Now listen, be honest, have you ever dreamed about having the most beautiful cottage garden? Well, you can. Sit back and be inspired.
This is a really fabulous old house. I really love it. And there's no doubt about it that old housing styles are really increasing in popularity. And the kind of garden that looks fabulous with them is the cottage garden. And they're also increasing in popularity. Look at this, isn't it stunning? This is a really good example of a cottage garden, especially with these raised sandstone beds. And the plants work really well together. They're all mingled in amongst each other. And cottage gardens really are just made up of perennial plants that self-seed everywhere. So you don't have to keep putting in annuals that are going to have to die and be replaced every year. They're just wonderful. One of the beaut things about cottage gardens is you're always getting little surprises. Look at this lovely erigeron daisy, which is self-sown among the rocks. And this heartsy or wild pansy is just growing here by itself, and it's self-sown right through the garden. So if you like a really neat and tidy garden which is well ordered, cottage garden may not be for you. But one of the reasons that I love them so much is that you can have a few weeds, like these ones over here behind me, and it doesn't really matter because there's so much else happening in the garden. And if you want to stop your flowers from becoming a weed in the garden, like this lovely campanula here, all you need to do is deadhead them or take the flower heads off when they've finished flowering. There are literally hundreds of plants that you can choose from for a cottage garden, especially in a lovely sunny spot like this. And it's a good idea to get a variety of height and texture. One of the favourites for a cottage garden is the lavender. And there are many varieties. This is the French lavender, which is just lovely. And then, of course, there are the forget-me-nots. You can't forget them because they spring up all over your garden. And the Chinese forget-me-nots, which are a deeper blue, flower just about all year long. Another favourite of mine is the Achillea or yarrow. It comes in a variety of colours. This is a pink one, and it's a good cut flower. And a good solid plant in your cottage garden is the penstemon or beard's tongue, and it has a lovely spike of flowers through summer. If you want a more delicate plant, there's these lovely Californian poppies. This one has a really soft, subtle yellow colour. And a cottage garden wouldn't be complete without the columbines, and they're also called granny's bonnets because they look a bit like a granny's bonnet. Now this particular columbine has self-sown in the full sun here, and it's flowering beautifully, but they'll also grow in shade. There are a lot of cottage garden plants that will grow in the shade, and in this particular garden, shade's been created by these 3 trees, and under their canopy there are a vast array of plants growing. It's really lovely wandering along this path. And over here there's some Japanese anemone which has died down now, but the flowers that come up later are really fabulous. But look over here, there's this wonderful winter rose. It's very old-fashioned and has a real subtlety to its colour, but it's great in these shaded conditions. And here's one you might not know, it's the green goddess lily. See how this spathe around the flower is fringed with green, and it's a great cut flower. It'll last about 3 weeks in water, and it's a good idea to pick it because otherwise it will come up everywhere. I think cottage gardens are really special places, especially since you can share so many of the plants with your friends. And this particular garden has got an added bonus, and that is that it's attached to a nursery, which means that you can buy so many of the plants that you see here in the nursery and you'll know they're suitable. And I think that's a terrific idea.
If you you need to tie a plant back, take a tip from nature. The passion vine, for instance, produces these lovely tendrils, and as the plants grow, these tendrils can expand. So you can make your ties do a similar thing, simply by wrapping your normal garden wire around a pencil to create a coil. And then, when you tie that coil onto the stake, secured around the plant, there's plenty of room in there for the plant to grow and expand in size without that tie cutting into the trunk and causing damage.
They're the ones that are a real problem because they dig up the blood and bone.
Oh, right. No, mine's not a really big dog. It's only a young puppy.
Yeah.
But it just loves pot plants.
What about the
I honestly believe that gardening is one of the most relaxing and satisfying of all hobbies, especially when it's shared with others.
I believe we've arrived, Pete. Is this the place
Yeah,
we're
this is
looking
it.
for?
Couldn't agree with you more. But isn't it marvellous these days how just about anyone, including people who are disabled, can still create and maintain their own gardens? Because no matter how difficult or awkward a job can be, there's always a simple, clever way of doing it. Actually, I sprayed my trees about 6 times, and every time I finish it rained again and washed it all off. You know, I'm amazed at the remarkable range of ingeniously designed tools that are on the market. And they're there not just for people who are disabled, but they're so good that they're for everyone. Look at this, for example. It's nothing more than a lightweight handle, but into which is clipped a whole range of different heads. Look at this. Out goes a miniature rake, and in goes a small grass rake. Terrific. And here's another one. This is terrific. This is a stand-up seed sower. But remember that some of these can be quite expensive. Now these look a bit rough and drab looking, but honestly, they're mine. I've made these up, and in fact they're capable of carrying out just about any job in the garden. But above all, they work. What do you reckon about that one?
I think it's great, Peter. I think it's great. One problem I do find with it, on reaching for something a little bit high like that, the rope can't get away from you. Now maybe if there was some sort of an eye there,
What, just
to hold
down in the
rope,
middle there? That's a terrific idea.
to hold the rope into there.
Otherwise it's all right then, is it?
Otherwise it's excellent. Well, I mean, if I was working like this at home with this garden in front of me, and I had to prune something like that or cut away something like that, I'd have to go inside and get my wife to do it for me. With this, it allows me to be a completely independent gardener. And I can work in any garden with a tool like this. With this type of garden, any person with a disability is able to do the gardening that they would like to do, not the gardening they can do.
You can't beat stainless steel when it comes to garden tools because it's so easy to clean. This is a cheap trowel, but I've bent the front up like that and formed a cup. And the reason why, it's perfect for transplanting seedlings while still standing up. And there's some lovely cabbages just waiting to be moved. But the great advantage of this is a long handle, and it means that the job of transplanting can be carried out from a standing position. Now, Alan suffers from an acute form of arthritis. It prevents him from bending down properly. But I'd be interested, Alan, in how it goes, how you'd go here at transplanting these seedlings.
I'll give it a go.
What do you reckon?
It's quite easy.
You reckon you could put a small veggie garden in?
It's quite simple. I reckon with a bit of practice I could.
You must be wondering what this is. Well, you can see it's nothing more than a couple of garden stakes. I've driven a staple in here, and it's attached to a cord, so that when it's opened out like that, the string itself just flows through quite easily. That's attached to a reel, which unwinds, and what's actually going on, it enables you to put in garden stakes or pegs and a garden line quite easily without having to bend down. Trudy's doing it quite easily there. She can't bend down because she's suffering from arthritis. And all that's necessary at the end is to tighten the line by rotating the reel and securing it with an old bent nail. Now, Trudy, I've got a beauty for you here. It's my patent drill maker. All it is an old claw hole with 2 of the claws removed. Let me know how you think it works.
Thank you, Pete.
What do you reckon, Trudy? Pretty good?
Oh yes, it is very good, very easy to handle. I don't have to bend down.
Well, that's what it's all about. You know, you don't have to bend down. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
The big question now is, how can you get the seeds down there? Look, it's dead easy. Hang on, hold those seeds a moment, Trudy. Get rid of him. Look, a very simple idea. It's nothing more than an ordinary funnel rammed into a piece of plastic conduit, and at the other end it's been kind of shaped so it can more or less conform with the ground. And all that's necessary is that you put the seeds in one end and drag the conduit along the drill with the other, and the seeds come out marvellously, just like laying eggs. Beautifully sown. Now I'm going to do the really hard work now. Look, I've got a marvellous idea here. It's nothing more than a cheap nail rake that's been cut down to size to make it very small but very light, and it's mounted onto a piece of old dowling so that it can be operated quite comfortably with one hand while you're standing up. It's dead easy, and of course all you do is backfill perfectly. And there you are, a highly sophisticated backfiller. What do you think about that, Trudy?
It's very good, Pete. Looks very easy to do.
There's no end to the different types of tools you can design yourself for easy gardening. This is nothing more than a lightweight mattock on a long pole for one-handed operation, terrific for getting rid of the big weeds. And here's another one. A trowel that with an extended handle, there it is, and it's also got another little handle along there to grip. Now this is for people that have arthritis and can't bend their wrists. And by the way, you saw those plants that Alan put in. That's the first gardening he's ever done. And what are we trying to prove? Look, it's dead simple. No matter who you are, whether you're disabled or not, you can still take part in this wonderful hobby of gardening. It took me, less than half a day to make up those tools, so you can do it too. It's dead easy, and in fact you'll probably come up with even better ideas to make gardening easy for everybody. Now don't forget the Gardening Australia magazine for March. It's out now and it's absolutely terrific. It's crammed with information for you all about the garden, so don't miss out. Now, next week, we'll show you some magnificent new roses, and you'll see how to prune and care for them during autumn. It's so important. We'll meet one of the finalists in the Greening Australia Tree Care Awards. You'll be amazed and delighted by this novel approach to land care. And you'll see an outstanding collection of superb begonias and meet some expert growers. Learn the secrets of success. That's what I'd call green, practical and colourful. We'll see you next week. This week you'll see some fascinating and remarkable plants. They're strangely beautiful, but they're always ravenous. You'll also see easy compost making, by the heap, in bins, or by simply turning a handle. And we go into a tropical wonderland in a Brisbane suburb. This is magnificent landscaping. The marvellous thing about gardening when it's absolutely pouring with rain is that you can come inside and admire your handiwork. After all, this is gardening too, isn't it? Hello and welcome to the programme. But water is the most precious of all our resources, and later we're going to show you how to install your own micro irrigation system. But first, those fascinating plants with an appetite.
These are fascinating plants. They belong to the world of science fiction or to the fantasy world. They are the carnivorous plants. They entice, they catch, and they devour their prey. They're the insect-eating plants. They trap their prey by two different ways. The first way is the active way, where the leaf actually moves and catches the insect inside it. That's the Venus flytrap. This one is the more passive way. It's the Sarracenia that's developed like a tube, and the insect falls down into the tube, gets trapped, and the nutrient from its body is absorbed into the plant. The modified leaves of the Venus flytrap are incredible. They look like a rabbit trap, but inside you can see that they're red. And that red attracts the insects, and they come in and they touch the little bristle hairs, and they just touch them once or twice and snap, shut like that. That's amazing. Now I can pull that out, and that'll stay shut for a couple of days. If it had food in it, the food would digest and be absorbed into the leaf. And this one is the Sarracenia. It's got a rich magenta red leaf, once again to attract the insects. And if you look down inside the tube, it's got masses of silver hairs all pointing downwards, so that when the insect climbs around, it falls down the slippery slide into juice at the bottom. And the common name of this plant is called pitcher plant, as in pitcher, a jug with water. As soon as the insect touches the water, its wings get wet, it drowns, and there it's stuck. It cannot get out of that amazing trap. You can see that the leaf of a Sarracenia is like a tube, and if I cut into it like this, you will be able to see something quite remarkable down inside the tube. I have a funny feeling that will be filled with a bit of moisture and just a few examples of the outer shell and the wings of the insect that have got trapped down there. The sundews are amazing things. Many of them can be found in Australia, but they work by having little red hairs all over the leaves, and at the end of all the little red hairs is a tiny little sticky droplet, and when an insect like a mosquito crawls onto the leaf, the droplet sticks it to it, and then the leaf curls over the insect. What a perfect trap. The cobra lily is a very special one. The insect climbs up the outer part of the leaf, and when it gets to here, it looks through the little hole and it can see what looks like to be stained glass windows. It thinks it can get out, but in actual fact it's a perfect trap because the cobra's hood traps it in there. They have one thing in common. They originate in very peaty, boggy soils, and that's why these fantastic things have adapted their leaves to catch the nutrients, because the soils that they originate in are very lacking in nitrogen. If you grow them at home, there's no need for you to feed them at all because they catch enough from nature. You'll get a lot of fun growing them in either outdoors or in a terrarium, and they are really fascinating things.
Hey kids, here's a good idea for you. You can make a daisy chain by putting a slit in the end of a daisy and threading daisies through. And I'll just do another one. But when you get the chain as long as you want, just make your final slit especially long so that you can put the first flower that you used through it. Just like that. And then you have a beautiful necklace of daisies.
Well, summer's just around the corner and we'll be watering yet again, and the odds are that most of us will waste an awful lot of water as we try to cover everything in sight. But we needn't. With modern micro-irrigation techniques and equipment, we can in fact use low and medium pressure to direct certain volumes of water to exactly the right place. Now these micro-irrigation systems, just like any others, need to be designed correctly. So you begin your work, in fact, on a piece of paper with a plan of your garden. And then, once you've decided what you need to do, wander out into the garden and begin to install it yourself. Now it begins at your water source, whether it be a tap or a solenoid, and the very first part of the system is in fact a filter to prevent blockages further down the line. Now the actual network itself is created out of this lightweight plastic pipe. Very easy to cut, all you need is a pair of secateurs. And then to create the shapes and get around the corners, you need to use things like elbows or T-junctions to actually create the network. The joints themselves, simplicity. If it's a bit hard, dip the ends in hot water, but they just slide together. And then if that joint there is under any sort of a pressure at all, then use one of these locking clamps on it to hold it securely in position. But you'll find it's great fun, and in no time at all, with these joints and fittings in the pipe, you've created your main network. When you come to put your antlets into this network, all you need is a little punch like this, and you simply punch a hole into the pipe itself and then screw in or push in your chosen outlet. Which one are you going to use? Well, that's where it gets a bit confusing. For your choice of sprinkler, in fact, depends upon the pressure that you've got available. Now to demonstrate this, I've laid the system out on a lawn. I hasten to add that normally, of course, these pipes would be running through your flower beds, and you would probably use your spade to bury them either underneath the soil or under the mulch. Now, if you've got too much pressure, this is what happens. Massive misting, water going everywhere, and it's not at all efficient. If this happens, you've got two choices. First of all, you can add some extra sprinklers to the line. That certainly does reduce the pressure a bit, but there's still too much fine spray coming out and it's too haphazard in its application. What in fact you're better off doing is to put the whole system through what is called a pressure control valve. Now the sprinklers are working perfectly. Nice large drops and all going exactly where you want them. And now we can see what they're supposed to do. An enormous range, incidentally, of nozzles and different sprinklers, so you may be a little bit confused at first. You've got the fine spray. This could be a 90 degree, a 180 degree or a 360 degree. Great for ferns and other plants and small annuals. For larger plants and a complete circle application, well, one of these mini sprinklers will do the job. And if that's not high enough, then you can simply lift it up a bit more with another riser going in. Alternatively, of course, you can use one of these type outlets which don't spin but rather spray water out in about 12 different directions at once. And that in fact is adjustable, as is this one, lifted a little bit higher and on a stand so that you can get it away from the pipe, and you can actually adjust the flow on this from a full flow right down to just a little trickle. If you want to apply more water, then you've got to use larger type sprinklers, but they're still on the micro system. These, for instance, are very good indeed. They will spread out to cover 3 or 4 metres wide, but the actual application rate depends upon the nozzle that's in them, and that's why we've got the different coloured nozzles. These are standards, you'll find them on charts anywhere. But there is a problem with these. If they stop spinning for some reason, then all the water goes in one direction only and your plants may not get watered. Therefore, the better type of sprinkler now available, also and proof, throws the water out flatter, so it's good for not getting the foliage wet, is this one. And if this stops, then at least you've got the water coming out in 5 or 6 directions at the same time. And if you can't get your main pipe close enough to the plant, then you simply put an extended flexible pipe on it, and that way you can get right up to where you want to put the water. For precise application on deep-rooted plants, you can actually drip the water onto the ground, but these microtubes tend to block up a bit quickly. Better these fixed-rate drippers or the adjustable ones, a variety of styles of these where you can actually change the flow that comes out. There's one, there's another type here, and of course there's this one too. This one you can stick on the end of a riser if you want to, but this one comes into its own when you put it on the end of a flexible tube, and then you can hang it over the edge and water your pot plants. And finally, this type, the fine spray, actually works the other way up. You put it above your hanging basket and let it spray all over the basket. And at the end of each line, you've got a cap like this, important for maintenance. All you need to do is let that flush out every now and again. Of course, that filter too at the start, you need to clean that out and keep that very clean. So there you are. Micro irrigation systems will save you lots of money and water.
It's interesting, isn't it? But when you do start to use drip irrigation, you get a remarkable reduction in those fungal diseases that are spread by rain splash or water splash, such as black spot of roses. But there's one kind of garden that absolutely thrives in the rain.
We're going to visit a tropical garden in Brisbane today that I've been told is really something special. You know, you expect to see good tropical gardens in Brisbane anyway. But boy, oh boy, take a look at this. What a stunning garden. And look at those Caryote wrens. I'm told they're only 10 years old, and look at the growth they've made. They're absolutely superb. Fishtail palms, don't often see them like that. You know, it's pretty easy to wax lyrical about a garden like this. It's absolutely superb. It's obvious that the gardener has a great affinity with plants. He knows exactly what he's doing. Now, this is a fabulous garden. The different textures, the different colours, they're all there. It's a garden for all seasons. It doesn't rely on flowers to give it transitory colour, like this Croton Norma. That's going to be like that all the year. It's got the right amount of dappled light to ensure that it keeps that brilliant colour. But that's not the only thing here. There are the greatest collection of tea trees that I've ever seen. And this variegated dwarf umbrella tree just gives that vibrant colour. There is flowers in this garden, of course, like the tropical rhododendron, properly called the Varaya. That's just in the right spot. It's looking so magnificent. But there's some beautiful palms in this garden. This is one of my favourites, the foxtail palm, Woodgetia bifurcata. It gets its common name from the fact that the new sheath looks just for all the world like a fox's tail. For years this one was protected, comes from Cape Melville in North Queensland, but recently the nurseries have been getting quite a few of them, so you can buy them now. They really are a stunning palm. I'm not too sure whether to stand next door to this one or not, because its shape reminds me a little of my own. It's called the bottle palm, and this too is a most interesting palm. You can use it as a feature plant. It stands out on its own, but in this situation it looks wonderful as well. But this garden's not all in the front. There's a lot more. So let's meet Dennis Hunscheit, the brains and the brawn behind this fabulous garden. Dennis, you've got the biggest collection of cordylines that I've ever seen. How come you've got so many of them?
Well, palms were my first passion, but once I had the greenery, I wanted to introduce some colour into the garden, and that's why I chose these lovely cordylines, which you can see here. We've got the soft pinks and the dark burgundies and quite a spectrum of different colours.
Yeah, there's the whole range of colours there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Contrasts well with the green of the palms. Dennis, how big is this garden?
It's a 40 perch block, Colin. It's just a quarter acre.
It's a lot of plants in a small area.
It certainly is.
Is it true that the garden's only 10 years old?
Absolutely. I planted every tree myself, so I can vouch for it.
Well, what did you want to achieve? What did you set out to achieve when you designed the garden?
A tropical garden, basically, Colin, and that's what I think I've done.
Well, he certainly has achieved that. And I guess at the end of a day, he would find nothing more refreshing than to plunge into this pool. Be a lot more refreshing than just sticking your feet in it. But, you know, a tropical garden is incomplete without a swimming pool, I believe, but so many of them, the pool becomes the dominant feature. It stands out like a sore thumb. Here, the garden is still the dominant feature. It complements each other. The soft foliage coming down over the edge softens the effect of the pool. It makes it so inviting. The water that tumbles down over the waterfall is part of the pool water. All pools have to filter their water. Here Dennis has used the swimming pool filter to create a waterfall that tumbles down and softens the effect and gives it that inviting feeling. But this isn't the only water feature in the garden. There's more. Tucked away in a corner of the garden is Dennis's rainforest stream. Like any good water feature, you don't see its beginning, but as it emerges out into the sunlight, the light picks up the water and it has that cooling and relaxing effect. Every good tropical garden should have a water feature. This one's superb. It works really well. If you ever needed verification that we're in a tropical garden, take a look at this golden cane palm. It's about 7 metres tall. If you're struggling to grow one in a tub in your lounge room or kitchen, don't ever expect it to get this big, because it won't. You know, this garden is just so packed full of interesting things. Just beside the bridge is another member of the palm family, Cameodora metallica. That'll grow to about 1 metre high. A lovely palm when it's grouped together. But not everything of interest's on the ground. Like right up the top of that Carpentaria palm. The berries are just stunning. Beautiful to look at. It's hard to believe that so much can be crammed into such a small space. But this really is a little piece of paradise. This is a garden I'd really love to come back to.
Cats are marvellous, but they love to use the soft bark of a young tree to clean and strengthen their claws. This can seriously weaken a tree over time, stunting its growth. But a length of plastic subsoil drainage pipe like this can provide a solution, but it must be thicker than the trunk. Measure off enough to cover the damaged area. Then cut it off with a knife. Next, cut along the whole length of the pipe. Now you can clip the pipe around the trunk like a protective sheath. This allows the damaged bark to be able to heal up quite safely. Later, as the trunk expands and grows, the pipe will open up too, until the bark is tough enough to cope with the cat's claws.
Someone's certainly been doing a lot of work here, and it looks good. This nice bark mulch around the garden and this lovely new path. It looks old, but it's new. But all of this has created a lot of stress on this tree. The building work that's been happening, the cutting through the roots to lay this path, and the removal of a tree that used to be here has caused this tree to have a problem. This chewed bark and webbing indicates that there's a borer in this tree, and borers usually only attack a tree when it's under stress. What you've got to do now is take a sharp knife and take all this away and see if you can find the entry hole of the borer. You might have a bit of a job to locate it, but when you do, just get some wire and poke it down the hole and kill the borer if it's still there. The important thing is that if you look after your trees, they're less likely to get borer.
Isn't this a marvellous pumpkin patch? Look, there are pumpkins everywhere and they're magnificent. But do you know why they've succeeded? Because they've been grown with the greatest of all fertilisers, and that's compost. But let's dispel a myth straight away. Compost isn't just nothing more than garden debris that's been allowed to rot down. That's not compost. It's not bad, but it's full of weed seeds. No, compost is made in a special way. One day you're going to look around and find enough of these piles of debris lying around to be able to say, I'm going to make some compost at last. Look at that lovely brew. Now what I've done, I've managed to acquire this delicious pea straw. Isn't it fantastic? I've wet it and I'm going to make it as the basis of a freestanding heap, and it's dead easy. The secret of getting a compost heap to heat up is to have lots of room. In other words, you put it right on the soil for a start and have the base of it at least 1.5 metres by 1.5 metres. So they're big. If it's any smaller, it won't get hot. It hasn't got the bulk. And you can make it into a neat square like that, but just put the stuff down, the basic material, whether it's straw or whatever, to a depth of about 200 millimetres. That's about 8 inches. But the greater the number of ingredients, the better the compost. Look at that. These are grass clippings and vegetable waste. And look at this stuff here, seaweed. Absolutely marvellous because it's absolutely crammed with trace elements. And compost loves it. Remember that anything that once lived can live again in a compost heap. This is natural fibre, it's cotton. They're fantastic, they'll soon rot down. Old nappies, they'll really get it going. And people worry about newspapers. Look, they're very good for the compost heap, but get rid of any with coloured print. And the stuff, I've already wet this, I tear it up like that. It breaks down much more effectively, and you can put that in the heap and just bury it in there so it won't blow around. It'll soon be buried completely anyway, like that there. There we are. But this little lot's not going to rot down very quickly or even get hot. It needs fuel, and the best fuel of all is animal manure containing plenty of nitrogen. This is sheep manure, a thin layer over the surface like that. That's marvellous. But there's one that's even better, and that's poultry manure. That's full of nitrogen. a good dollop of this right over the heap, and I can feel it starting to throb slightly already. I'm going to put some pepper and salt into this nutritious pie. Look at this. Lovely chicken pellets, aren't they beautiful? That's marvellous. But there's more. Yes, you've guessed it. It's inevitable. Blood and bone. Look at that. Beautiful, isn't it? That's absolutely crammed with nitrogen. But there's one more. This stuff here. My God, it stinks. It's fish meal. It's got the most revolting smell, but compost heap, they love it. And now the most important ingredient of all, the water. It is absolutely essential. And what you do, you literally saturate the whole thing, and you do that at every stage. From now on, it's nothing more than a repeat of the same process. A layer of the basic raw materials, then seaweed, then the manures, then the fertilizers, and always a good saturating watering. It's so important. And just keep building up the heap, adding the different layers, and eventually, when it's big enough or when you've exhausted the materials, you'll finish up with what looks like a magnificent chocolate layer cake, but infinitely more nutritious. Now, even if this heap was left completely undisturbed, it would still heat up quite dramatically in 3 or 4 days and then gradually cool down. Within 1, 2 or 3 months, you'd have a wonderful core of superb compost. But if you wanted to hasten the process, all you do is pull this whole heap apart every 3 days, keeping it watered, and form another heap all the time, and that means that the whole lot can be converted into compost in less than a month if you want to. Now, if you think all this is a bit hard, and it's not really, you can obtain one of these lidded compost bins. They come in all shapes and sizes, and honestly, they're absolutely fantastic. Look at this here. You can use not only your kitchen scraps, but also your tea and coffee grains, keep them watered, and you can see how full that is there. Look, the method of decomposition is much different than the open heap, and what it will do, it'll rot down very rapidly indeed, so much so that it's almost impossible to keep them full. They have a very good, tight, fly-proof lid. There it is, and in fact the mice can't get in the bottom because of the sheer weight of the whole thing. But there's even more significant methods of making compost. This is the wonderful compost tumbler. They cost about $400 and they're worth every cent. They're absolutely marvellous. All you do is you put in your kitchen scraps, a bit of water, your grass clippings, and every day you turn them around like this a few times, about 5 times. At the end of 2 weeks, open up the hatch, it comes off quite freely, give it a complete turn, like that, and out drops this gorgeous brew, ready for the garden. Isn't it lovely? And finally, you can't go past the good old side support compost bin. They don't have to be so large. In fact, if they're small, they can still retain the heat because of the supporting sides. But no matter which method of making compost that you use, you still get this fantastic stuff. There it is, compost, the greatest of all fertilizers. It's so good you can put it on your muesli in the morning.
For striking cuttings, it's a good idea to dip the end of the cutting into one of those root-forming compounds, but never ever dip it into the original container. In this case, I've got a liquid, so I just pour a bit in the cap, dip the end of the cutting into the root compound, strike it in the normal way. What's left in the lid doesn't go back into the original container because it'll destroy the viability of the rest of it. Throw it away.
This is a very handy garden plant. It's called Coleonema pulchrum, or the golden diosma. Golden because of its foliage, and it has these tiny little starry white and pink flowers. It's also called the breath of heaven commonly because of its lovely fragrant leaves, and that's why it's very useful to have it growing beside a pathway as you brush by. It's a very hardy plant, it loves the full sun, and it loves being cut back after flowering. In fact, you can use those cuttings to propagate new plants. The bush grows about 1 metre high and about 1 metre wide, so it really fits in very nicely into the landscape, and because of its golden foliage really adds a lot to the garden. It's a very handy plant, the golden diosma.
By the way, about these golden coleonemas or diosmas, have you ever thought of using them as a kind of a wonderful ground cover? They're beautiful. They form a kind of a golden scented carpet. They're fantastic. Now, next week, we look at shade cloth. It's a material designed to control light, and there are types to suit all conditions. You'll also experience the total delight of magnolias, see some breathtaking varieties of prunus, and learn how they're grown. Well, there you are. This is one programme you can't afford to miss. We'll see you next week. This week on Gardening Australia, we take a look at our second finalist in the Greening Australia Tree Care Awards. Here's another clever and innovative project to save and improve our native vegetation. And we're going to show you the correct way to propagate cuttings so you'll always get the best results. And how about this for a beautiful suburban garden with a difference? It needs little water or fertiliser. It's a dream garden. Hello and welcome to the programme. Have you ever heard of the term wildlife corridor? Well, it's to do with the bush. It's important, and this week it's a vital part of a unique project from our Tree Care Award finalists. Now, Malcolm's going to tell us more about that later on. But first, if you have a concrete vista, do you envy those people that have lovely, productive vegetable gardens? Well, take heart, we might have just the answer.
Now here's a fairly typical backyard. It's got some nice plants and some nice sitting areas and playground area for the kids, but it's got one problem, and that is that there's really nowhere to put a veggie patch. All along the fence here, it's well planted out and it's a nice barrier around the garden. And of course over here under the trees, well, it's just too shady. And the same goes for right along the fence over here as well. Now there's this lovely lawn area, but really the kids need a spot where they can kick a ball around and have a bit of fun. So there's really only one spot left, and it's just this tiny little area here. We can take the veggie patch right down past this clothesline here. We can incorporate that in it because they don't need to be very big veggie patches. But the thought of digging this grass up doesn't appeal to me at all. And there's a lady in Australia called Esther Deans, and she's made famous the no-dig method. And I'm going to show you just how it's done and how easy it is. The first thing you need is some material to make the frame. Now you can use bricks or anything else you've got lying around. And I had this piece of timber lying around. It's a 7x2. But I also needed to buy some sides for my frame. And so I bought these new sleepers, which is one of the cheapest way of buying hardwood timber. You'll also need a bale of straw and a bale of loosened hay like this. And the two of them together will cost less than $15. You'll need some blood and bone and some really good quality compost. So let's get started. The beaut thing about these sleepers is that you can just plonk them on the ground where you want them and move them around until they're right. You don't need string lines and all that sort of stuff. But then you are going to stake them so that they do stay upright. You could stake them on the outside, but that makes mowing a bit hard. So I've decided to put the stakes on the inside, pre-drill the stakes first, and then just hammer them into your uprights. Now, because I've got the clothesline post here, I'm also going to have to put this bit of white pipe over it. I'll cut it back later, but that'll mean that I can easily get this post in and out. Now there is a secret ingredient that I didn't mention before, and that's this newspaper, because we need to put down a layer that will kill the grass. So put it down maybe about 1/4 or 1/2 inch thick all the way over. And it's a good recycling idea for your newspaper. Then we get our loosened hay and just take the pads straight as they come from the bale. You get about 2 across. You can use just half of one of these pads if you want to make it go a bit further and won't cost you as much. But I've decided to use a whole thick pad because it's really good nutrient, so I'm going to put it on nice and thick. On top of this, I'm going to put a layer of blood and bone because it's a really good organic fertiliser. Sprinkle it right over. And then we're going to put a layer of loose straw. Just tease the straw out and fork it on and make it about 8 inches thick all the way over. The pile's starting to get pretty high at this time, but that's okay because it's going to rot down pretty quickly. Now put on another layer of blood and bone, and then the last layer is the compost. Now you can just put it on about 4 inches thick in the areas that you're going to plant, or if you've got enough good quality compost, you can spread it all over. This is terrific compost that I'm using, but if you don't have any and you have to buy it and you can't buy really good compost, then it's probably a good idea to put some manure under the compost as well so that you've got a lot of nutrients. And that's it, you're finished. Well, that didn't take long, did it? And all you have to do now is plant. You can plant whatever you like, flowers if you want to. I'm going to put in some vegetables and some herbs and things. And the produce that I get will be fantastic because it won't take very long for this all to rot down and be just all compost, and it's fantastic for growing things. And the best thing about it is that you can have one of these no-dig gardens anywhere. If all you've got is a bit of concrete in your courtyard, you can put one there. But make sure you put some twigs underneath the newspaper then for drainage. And if you're a disabled person, you can have one up high so that you don't have to bend over. It's a really terrific idea and it works. It's a no-dig garden.
Sometimes you might like to change the shape of your garden bed. You might like it to be a wider or broader expanse, and you might be a bit unsure about how to get the shape exactly right. Well, the simple trick is to use a good old garden hose. You can make a straight line and then you can curve it or serpentine it around, and you'll get the right angles and the right depth, and that'll give you much more confidence to create your new garden bed.
One of the marvellous things about wandering through a garden during summer and autumn is the ability to take material for cuttings. Look, there's a whole range of plants that you can use at this time. But remember to take them in the shade or in the morning or in the evening. Look at this rhododendron, for example. Look, you can take this piece here because it's got a lovely broom head of growth right on the end. Take the lot. And it's the same with the azaleas. They've got a much smaller one, but they too can be used as cuttings later on. But when you're dealing with conifers, here's a golden cypress. It's beautiful. Take them from the side, but always take the new growth. And that goes with the thuya too. This is a beautiful plant, but make sure that when you take it, you don't leave a hole in the side. Look, you can get a great collection of cuttings at this time of the year. Look, there's a huge range of beautiful ornamental plants that anyone can propagate from cuttings during summer and autumn. Let's have a look at the loot we've got here. And by the way, always shove them in a plastic bag. Here we are. Look at this. Now look at this one. It's a Daphne. But you don't just grab hold of this and shove it in the ground and hope it'll grow, because it won't. It's got bucklet hope. What you do is you pick these lovely sturdy side shoots, not the long ones. They're the ones that are more likely to succeed. Here's one here. See that there? Cut him off. Now this innocent little thing here, it doesn't have any roots. It doesn't know there's no moisture going in that bottom end, but all the time it's giving off moisture. So what you do is you stop it from giving away moisture by using your secateurs to remove most of the leaves and cutting the ones at the top in half. There is a lovely good cutting. What else? Here's an azalea. That was the one I cut earlier. Look at that. See that lovely young new wood? They strike very easily at this time of the year. There's a beautiful azalea cutting. just remove the leaves from the bottom like that, and the top ones at the side there, just trim. And again, you've got a beauty. Now what about the conifers? Look, here we are. This is the golden cypress, I call it. It's a Chamaecyparis cripsii. And it's these bright, shining, young growths that are the ones that strike best. Cut them off, like that, and then just simply trim them a little bit. Trim some of the bottom leaves off, and trim the top part too, like that, see? There it is. And there is a superb little cutting that will strike with ease. But even these carefully prepared cuttings, you don't just shove them into the ground. They need a special medium. It's nothing more than a 50-50 mixture of coarse river sand and granulated peat. That gives perfect drainage and at the same time will hold the moisture. Look, I've already got a container of it here. You see, I've already struck some of the conifers. And to strike them, it's a very simple operation. You make a hole, use an old pencil if you like, and just drop it in, make sure it's not hung up, and firm it. Dead simple. And you see how close they are together? The closer the better, because it gives that added humidity. They need it. And it's the same with the rhododendrons and the azaleas and the daphne. Again, make a hole like that and drop it in and make sure there's no gap between the bottom of the hole and the base of the cutting. And there's another one going in too. Dead simple. Anybody could do it. Even a child can do it. But again, they've got to be kept completely out of the sun, and in fact they need a very close atmosphere indeed. That's why I use nothing more than an ordinary plastic bag supported by a couple of pieces of wire. These Deutsches were struck, about a month ago, and you can see they've already taken root. It's terrific and it's dead easy. Look at these. I struck these, about 5 or 6 months ago. They're junipers. Look at those beautiful roots that they've developed. Look at that, isn't it lovely? That's how simple it all is.
Trees and their understories reduce the runoff of sediments into streams and rivers and thereby add to the health and vigour of our rivers. They also reduce the effect of chemical residues by filtering them out. Our second of the finalists for the ABC's Greening Australia Annual Tree Care Awards comes from Victoria this week. Hillcrest Reserve is part of the minor tributary on the Mullumbullen Creek, part of the Yarra catchment system. And this particular project has sought to increase the vigour of remnant vegetation and improve the quality of the wildlife corridor. Over to Jane Edmondson.
Hillcrest Reserve is in the Mullumbullen Creek Valley. Mullumbullen is an Aboriginal word meaning many big birds. It's in the Donvale Mitcham area, just 20 minutes from the centre of Melbourne. It's a corridor of green. This is an open grassland patch. It's where the Hillcrest Association have started their planting to revegetate this whole site. It's to extend the wildlife corridor, and these trees, being 5 years old, are a good example of their planting. The Hillcrest Association have planted over 7,000 Indigenous plants in the 25 hectares. It's all done primarily by the local community, and a project like this needs to be well and truly coordinated, and it's here that Caroline Falkingham comes in.
The aim of the project is to actually restore the bushland and continue to manage it in such a way that it remains a viable area for wildlife habitat. So there's a range of things happening here, including tree planting, weed control, community education, taking people on possum prowls of an evening and that sort of thing. As you can see, the reserve is very close to suburbia, and it's here you get problems of garden escapees, plants that leap over the fence, and things like blackberry and agapanthus and even the privet. And ivy is a real problem because it smothers the Indigenous vegetation, and that's part of the program, to get rid of these weeds as well as plant trees. If we've got an area which is predominantly native vegetation and we've got the 3 strata, that is, we've got the upper story plants, the middle story and then grasses, we have good success in those areas because the native stuff takes over pretty quickly. So when you've removed the exotic, that takes over. We have far more trouble on the fringe areas where we've got local residents perhaps dumping things and then they take off, or we've got a really good hold of exotic vegetation that's just taking over that particular site. And with our removal, it is a constant battle. We really have to keep going back and ensuring that we get all the fragments that are left and make sure that new stuff isn't coming up, and if it is, then we have to get onto it straight away and revegetate.
Native plants grown from locally collected seeds are planted, and because there's plenty of large trees, they do a lot of planting with grasses and sedges, things like the kangaroo grass in particular, that give the lower story. Also the middle story plants like hop goodenia are well used. This is the Mullum Creek, and part of the Hillcrest Reserve is the catchment area for this very beautiful site. It's here that fish and dragonfly, eels, even long-necked tortoises live. And that's why it's important that the water quality is kept up.
Now, it's absolutely essential that we don't allow a lot of pollutants into our water, and that means that that's a consideration not just here in this reserve but in the nearby area. And so litter can make its way through our drainage system and into creeks, and so can run off from roads, whether it's got oil on it or whatever. So it's essential that when we look at our water quality, we find ways to educate the community to ensure that they recognise that it can become a problem if it's not something we consider in our daily lives.
The reserve is well used by bushwalkers and bird watchers, and one is Cecily.
I've lived here for 32 years and I've come down here many times and wrung my hands at the sight of the weeds and thought, what can we do about it? And fortunately there is a core of hard-working people that have all pitched in, helped with tree planting and helped with weed removal, and we've achieved a lot in a short space of time.
The volunteers are absolutely essential to the success of the program, and we're fortunate here to have a fairly active community who are prepared to come along and work at Working Bees in various different ways, whether it's weed removal or tree planting.
What's the importance of the soil conservation to the project?
Soil conservation is a very big issue, and naturally it comes into the program in a big way because of the revegetation and the weed control measures that we take. So it's absolutely essential that we make sure our program is going to hold the soil in place, and that's what happens when you choose indigenous plants for revegetation and when you remove weeds. Now, if we weren't to do those things, gradually, and in certain areas this has begun to happen, the erosion takes place.
We hope that the Mullum Creek entry is an inspiration to other community groups throughout Australia, and we wish them all the best in Greening Australia's National Tree Care Awards.
Well, it's certainly congratulations to all those people involved in the Mullum Creek project. And we're really looking forward to the work of the remaining finalists. Now, if you haven't been able to get the latest issue of our Gardening Australia magazine, look, all you have to do is ring our toll-free number and you can subscribe. And this is the number. It's 008 800 933. This number's going to be repeated at the end of the programme, so get your pens ready. Now, Malcolm's got a sweet little piece in this month's magazine, but let him tell us all about it.
There's something decidedly evocative about sweet peas in spring, that sort of cottagey feeling with very heady scent of perfume in the air in early spring. And I think the Gawler strain of sweet peas are probably the best to give you that perfume. They come in just a cluster of 4 flowers, but you'll need a fairly large trellis, up to 3 metres high in this case, and you see they'll fill those to perfection. But if you want to grow them really well, let's get down to the aspect of the soil. In common with most flowering plants, you need an open, sunny aspect if you're going to get them to grow well, and sweet peas certainly need all of that. The next most important part is in the soil. If you've got a friable sandy loam like this, you're really in luck for growing sweet peas, because that is the very best you can get. But if you've got a heavy clay, you're going to have to spend a bit of time putting out gypsum to improve that drainage, because without that, sweet peas won't thrive. The only fertiliser you use on sweet peas, by the way, is superphosphate. And the reason for that is that sweet peas make their own nitrogen. And if you put out anything that's got a lot of nitrogen in it, or in fact copper kills sweet peas, so you don't go using that. Super's the stuff. One big handful, jolly handful like that, to about a 9-foot row, 3 steps, and you've got rid of that. And you need lime, this is dolomite lime. Similarly, one big handful about that size to a 9-foot strip. And then you can add the composted material. In this case, pulverised sheep manure is really good because it's very low in nitrogen. And remember that the sweet peas make their own nitrogen on nodules on their roots, so they don't need too much added. It's put out pretty liberally, and all it really does is create a really nice base to conserve soil moisture. One of the side benefits, of course, you get lots of nettles come up in it, but If you learn to make nettle soup, that's not a real problem. All this soil preparation's done about 4 weeks prior to actually planting the sweet pea seeds, which in this area is done in April. Well, onto a bed that's a very fine tilth and weed free, we sow the seed as close as we can to the trellis base. The seed's sown at about 2 centimetres depth, the last joint of your finger, just plummet it into the ground like that, and about 8 centimetres apart, the width of your knuckles. Just move up the row like that all the way till you've done the whole row. And the seed, the sweet peas are simply sown by pressing the pea into the bottom, backfilling that soil to remove the air cavities, and of course they're watered straight away to remove any possible chance of the roots desiccating as they germinate. And they should be about this size after 4 weeks. In warm, humid conditions, sweet peas can get afflicted with powdery mildew, and that saps the vigour of the plant and of course reduces their flowering ability. Treatment is to use sulphine. It's a wettable sulphur fungicide. You can't go using the copper-based fungicides because they'll kill the sweet peas. These little tendrils or spiders are nipped out of all of the plants, and you just tuck the leaf back underneath like that and pin them with a small ring such as this, and we just put those around like that. Hold them nice and firm so that as these young plants start to grow they don't thrash around everywhere. These little laterals are nipped out, and that keeps the vigour in the young flowering head up here, and if they're pinned back that way they'll stay and flower to perfection.
I'm a great believer in adding some peat to potting mix. It really improves the water holding capacity. Just tip a bit in a bucket. Now, if I was to use this peat in its raw state, it sometimes has a waxy coating on it that prevents water from getting into it. There's an easy way of overcoming that. Just pour some boiling water on it. Leave it stand overnight, and next morning use it in your potting mix and it'll be perfect.
In just a few weeks this will become houses, followed by gardens, probably full of exotic plants which draw very heavily upon our resources. And if not managed properly, they can waste those resources and they can contribute to pollution. Now sure, we need to live somewhere, but do our gardens need to be wasters and polluters? The answer is no, and we can find a good example in this typical suburban street. Normally street verges are down to grass, but of course grasses need watering, they need fertilising and they need mowing. So why not get rid of the grass altogether? Replace the grass with a good mulch, in this case it's wood chips, and into the wood chips put lots of little ground covers. Now the ones which are really doing well in this 4-year-old garden here are mainly the Hemiandropungens, this butte blue-flowered, spreading creeper, slightly prickly, good for keeping the dogs off in the neighbourhood, demands no water whatsoever, flowers through the summer, just about finished its run now, but rapidly spreads to produce a beautiful green solid cover. And in between it, why not dot a few small things like banksias, kangaroo paws, little conedias, small ground covers, which will in another year or two produce a fantastic effect here. But in the meantime, there's still a lot of bare ground, or I should say wood chips, and there's room here for a flower display in spring, which you begin in autumn. I'm going to sow some everlasting seeds here, lovely white fluffy seeds, very light. Just simply scatter them on the ground. Not when it's too windy, mind you, or your neighbours might get the lot. And because they are white and fluffy, there's a simple way you can prevent them blowing away when they're down there, and that is to water them. For the hairs on the seeds themselves actually knit into the soil, and once they're firmly attached, you'll never get them off, and they'll germinate. The garden complements the house here, for the house is a passive solar design. These windows face to the north, and the last thing you can afford to do is to block out the light to these in winter. So the shrubs at the front are low, and they gradually go up to become larger as you get further away from the house. Now the plants here are mainly West Australian natives, some of them in fact locals, saved from the bulldozers as the developers moved in. But you can get the same effect wherever you are by choosing plants that are local to your area. Just as lovely, just as wonderful. What have we got tucked here? Great collection of banksias, and there's a lovely prostrate banksia down here. Nearly all the prostrate banksias needing full sun, very good drainage, and they don't like frost very much. This particular one, Banksia petiolaris. Truly beautiful. A lovely little grouping here, offset by the gravel used as a ground cover and also a path. But next to the banksia, one of the native lilies. This particular one is Dianella. Now, we don't grow many of our native lily plants, which is a pity, for many of them are quite beautiful. This one has superb flowers in spring, followed by very attractive purple berries. But even now, it still, with its strap-like leaves, looks very attractive indeed. The bright reds are those of the Beaufortia squarosa, a magic plant for bringing the birds into the garden. There's nectar on this all year round, small growing, summer flowering, and a lovely long summer flowering period too. Of about the same proportion, one of the myrtles. This particular one is Hypocalypna stricta. Now, it's perhaps just past its peak, but nonetheless very attractive, particularly with the lovely little scaevola growing beneath it, Scaevola humilis. And in fact, none of the large plants here receive any water at all, but these small ones, just to keep them going through their first summer, well, a little touch of water now and again won't go astray. Even more ground covers, amongst them a strange grevillea called Grevillea nudiflora. It grows from a central point, has long stems with leaves on it for about half the way, and then the stems are bare and tiny little red flowers amongst it, and you get the birds down on the ground amongst this having a ball. Now, this is a kangaroo paw, lots of them found in many gardens nowadays. This is one of the original species, Anaxanthus pulcherimus, or the golden kangaroo paw, and a month ago this was fabulous, beaut gold flowers. Past its best now, what do? The answer, give it a really good haircut. Now, this might seem a bit drastic, but in fact you can do it with nearly all the kangaroo paws. Cut off the old flowering stems. If there's any nice new little ones, like down here, then you can leave those, but just remove all the old foliage. Looks terrible, you might say. From this will come beaut, new growth, free of diseases, and a guaranteed good flowering next year. And you can do this with all the kangaroo paws. Now, I love this garden, and when we live on one of the driest continents on Earth, with some of the best flora on Earth growing on it, then surely a garden full of plants like this is a garden of the future, particularly in these environmentally aware days. Give the native plants a go. They'll reward you with their little subtleties and their enormous beauty.
Hippeastrums are also known as the Barbados lily. This fabulous exotic bulb comes from South America, of course, and hybridisation's given us an enormous range of flower sizes and forms, and the colours, well, the range in colours is just staggering. You can plant hippeastrums from late autumn right through to early spring, and they'll grow just about anywhere in Australia. They like full sun, and they'll even do well in partial shade. But I'm afraid they don't like frost, so if you live in a frosty area, you'll have to cover your hippeastrum bulbs with straw during winter. They like a well-drained soil with lots of rich organic matter worked into it, and they'll grow to between 30 and 60 centimetres tall. During the summer, keep the water up to them, but as soon as they go into winter dormancy, keep them a little bit on the dry side. You can propagate them by taking offsets off the bulbs during their winter dormancy, or by sowing ripe seed. Hippeastrums can be grown in pots. They do very well, but don't plant the bulbs too deeply in the pot.
Well, as you can see from Pamela's no-dig garden, you can harvest the fruits of your labour no matter where you live. So there's no excuse for not producing your own lovely vegetables and flowers. Now, next week... Have you ever wanted to build a rock garden but you weren't sure how? Well, Malcolm will put you on the right track and you'll get professional results. And we look at our next Tree Care Award finalists from North Queensland. Here in the tropical rainforest there are still great problems to overcome. And what could be more breathtaking than a mass display of tuberous begonias? We'll look at these special plants and learn more about their care and culture. Well, there's a colourful brew to look forward to. We'll see you next week.
This week, the event we've been waiting for. We announced the winner of the Greening Australia Tree Care Awards. You'll see for yourself why this outstanding project was selected. You'll learn the easy, simple way to create an attractive, bright green and hard-wearing lawn. And we'll show you some breathtakingly beautiful water lilies and even how to grow them in their own unique environment. Hello and welcome to the programme. Do you know which is the most powerful movement of our time? It's this wonderful activity everywhere to heal and repair our damaged land. That's why we've teamed up with Greening Australia. Later you'll see an inspiring and exciting winning project. But there are other busy bees, the real ones. They play a significant role in cross-pollination, and later you'll get a real buzz out of this. But first of all, and I mean this, start drooling, because here's a taste of the tropics.
You know, living in a tropical or a subtropical climate is really great for people, but it's also good for fruit trees too. Behind me is one of the most diverse range of fruit trees that you're ever likely to see. There's tropicals and exotics and subtropical fruit all doing well. If you're one of the Mexicans who live south of the border, you know, down south way, none of this will be for you because they don't like cold climates. But anywhere north of Brisbane, a lot of these things will do really well. We're going to have a look at some of the more interesting ones, and one of those is a fascinating plant. It's called a jackfruit. There's nothing too exotic about the tree. It's just a good evergreen shade tree, just the thing for the backyard. What is interesting is the fruit. Here we've got an immature jackfruit. It's still green. As it gets ripe, it'll go to this browny yellowish colour. This one's split open, so we'll have a look inside it. They're pretty hard to split open, but once you get them open, you can see inside there. They're very high in carbohydrate. I'm not a great lover of jackfruit, I'm afraid, but a lot of people eat them in curries and cooked. They're really good, but I've only eaten this bit around the seed. You'll see the seeds are there, but that's the jackfruit. Pretty interesting sort of fruit. I find it a lot easier to get enthused about the carambola or the Avaroa or the five corner, whatever you like to call it, than I did about the jackfruit. These are only little trees and they're already producing after about a couple of years. They'll grow to about 12 metres high. Great tree though. The fruit itself is really stunning. It's called five corner naturally because of its shape. It's got these 5 wings on it. If you've ever eaten in a restaurant lately and had fruit salad, you might find that you have slices of these on the fruit salad. And that's what they look like. And that fruit is absolutely delicious. It's as sweet as can be. Here's a true exotic, a real tropical plant. Comes from Malaysia. Does best in Cairns and it does in Brisbane. It's commonly called an iview. The fruit looks a little bit like a citrus until you cut it open. And you'll find that it's nothing like a citrus inside. Open it up and it's got that big black seed in it. And the flesh inside there is absolutely superb. Tastes a little bit like caramel custard. Beautiful. You know, I reckon the mango epitomises tropical fruit. It's well known that I'd go to jail for a mango because I love them. They're a great tree for the tropics because a brilliant shade tree in the backyard, just the thing for the kids to play under. There's lots of different varieties. This one's a late variety, it's called Kent. One of the better ones is Bullock's Heart or Kensington Pride. They're all great mangoes. They need a well-drained soil. If the drainage isn't so good, put them on a mounded bed. Give them some fertiliser. They need about a good big handful of fertilisers about 3 or 4 times a year. And that will really power them along and you'll get beautiful mangoes like this. When it comes to eating them, you don't have to go over the bark. I'll show you. When it comes to eating a mango, it's pretty simple. If you don't want to drip juice all over the floor, just cut the top off the mango. Turn her over. Score it along there, across there, across there, and across there if you want to. And then you just fold it out like so, And it's so easy just to pick them off there and eat. Hey, get out of there, that's mine. Hey, stop that.
Don't ever be put off by the delicate appearance of many of our native ferns. They're remarkably tough. Many of them are in fact fire followers and survive bushfires quite well. As soon as the outer fronds appear to start to break down, be ruthless about removing them. Cut them right off and you'll find that lots of new foliage will keep coming up through the middle. A fern thrives on regular pruning, but don't forget to always give them a good water afterwards.
The average garden has quite a few cutting implements in it, and it really does pay to keep these things sharp. Secateurs, perhaps, are the most commonly used. You want a nice sharp clean pair, not a rusty blunt pair, that's for sure. Now you can try and sharpen it while the secateurs are assembled, but it's a little bit difficult. Far better, in fact, to take the secateurs apart, remembering as you do so exactly how they go together, because you've got to put them together again afterwards. Now once you've got them apart, you can then sharpen the blade itself using a curved stone, because it's a curved blade, either one of this style or, if you prefer, one of the round style. Once it's sharpened, you can clean up the blade itself if you like with some old sandpaper or emery paper, oil it, put it back together, and you've got a superb pair of secateurs which can make the kindest cut of all.
Do you know which is the most attractive, the most dominant, and in many ways the most significant part of any garden? It's the part that we walk on, that we lie on or jump around on, the part that we love to roll on. It's the lawn, and there's no doubt about it that a lawn adds enormous character to your garden itself, because it surrounds all the beds like a sea. But it looks particularly good when it's underneath deciduous trees, because here there's a special magic atmosphere. Here, this wonderful combination of shade, green clipped grass and even toadstools has a magnificent effect. And it's difficult to believe that under this superb surface, at one time was nothing but absolute rubbish. In other words, it looked like this. This has been cultivated to a depth of about 10 centimetres, that's 4 inches, but it's rubbishy looking and a bit hungry. In other words, it's the kind of thing that people are confronted with regularly when they want to try and start a lawn. It needs fertiliser, something like this. It's nothing more than blood and bone with a little bit of potash, about 10%, mixed together. And this is applied over the rough surface at the rate of that much there for every square metre, a good fistful. And it's dead easy to do. A good, even coverage. This can be raked in during the levelling process. I've also bulked the blood and bone out with sand to make the distribution much easier. The easiest way to get an even surface is simply to knock the tops off the hills and to fill in the valleys. That's a good start. And you finish off the surface with a simple homemade leveller. This is nothing more than a fence paling, but you can see what I've done. I've crudely nailed a rake to it. And it's very simple to operate. Now you can see the advantage of using dry soil. It makes this kind of a job a dream. And afterwards, a light raking across the fall to create grooves for the seed. What kind of seed? It depends where you live. Go to your local nursery people. They know the kind that suits your district. What I want is a lovely green, tough lawn that's green all the year round, in fact. That's why I'm using pasture grass. This is perennial rye. Here's brown top, lovely and small and fine. And also Chewings fescue. 1/3 of each, there it is, and bulked out with lots of sand. And that's the rate for every square metre. Try and broadcast it close to the ground if it's windy, otherwise you'll lose it. And go up and down one way with about half the seed, and then back and forth across with the other half. That means you'll get even coverage. And then just lightly rake it in, just dragging the rake around, just enough to dirty the seed. After that, it's no more than a good saturation, and it really needs it, and don't let it dry out. It'll be up in a week. In 2 months' time, it'll be snapping at your ankles, and in 6 months' time, when you're trudging along forlornly behind the mower, you'll understand what I meant when I say that the lawn is the most dominant part of the garden.
have a look at this fantastic tree. It's called the firewheel tree. Comes from Queensland and its botanical name is Stenocarpus sinuatus. I think we'll call it the firewheel tree because its flowers do resemble a fire wheel. It's a most ornamental tree and it looks really good up against the glossy green leaves. Birds love it. Not only I, but birds, rosellas and honeyeaters just love going to the nectar in the flowers. It's a fairly slow growing tree, to be about 10 metres high, and give it a little bit of frost protection. It loves deep, rich, moist soil, and you have a go at growing this one. It's a really lovely native plant.
My grandfather always told me you should really look after the bees in your garden, for they're the best friends that you can possibly have. And in his day, because he was living off the garden, he certainly needed them to pollinate both the fruit and the vegetables. But in today's ornamental flower gardens, perhaps they're not as important as they used to be, for we're not concerned with fruit or with seeds on many of our plants. And certainly the bees don't visit every plant, for they are introduced after all, and they're certainly not the only pollinator that there is in the garden. Lots of other insects pollinate plants too, so too do small mammals, butterflies, and of course birds as well. So not every flower will attract the bees. For instance, the buddleia and the lantana, both good garden specimens, very tough, but the flower itself has too long and thin a tube for the bee to get down into to reach the nectar. And so you don't see bees on those, but you do see butterflies. And other plants might have curious mechanisms for keeping bees out. This is Otacanthus, a most unusual flowering plant, and it has a trapdoor arrangement which protects the insides of the flower from visiting insects like bees. They're simply not heavy enough when they land on the lower petal to open the flower up to allow pollination to take place. And incidentally, we see this particular flower as blue and only blue, but insects, which see a different range of the light spectrum to us, might well see a landing strip. They see the flowers entirely differently to the way we do. And does the perfume appeal to them? Well, some say it does, and others say it doesn't. But why do bees come into the garden in the first place? Well, the answer is they're after nectar. It's in tiny little drops in some flowers, and it's the reward the flower offers to the bee so that the bee will visit it and carry pollen from one plant to another. That nectar, incidentally, is gathered up, of course, by the bee, taken back to the hive, and later we're able to enjoy it as honey. And flowers which generally attract the bees have lots of nectar and are fairly open, like the daisies. You'll see bees all over daisies, other insects too, gathering the nectar as they pollinate the flower. Now, bees in the garden generally are quite good things to have around, but there are times when they're a disadvantage. For instance, this is Lippia. It's a lovely lawn substitute, tough and hardy, will take full sun, rotten soils, everything. And it can be walked upon, but beware, it flowers in summer, and these attractive little flowers are very attractive to the bees. So walk on a Lippia lawn, barefoot, in summer while it's flowering, and you may very well be sorry. But apart from that, the bees certainly are most welcome. And when one gets to the fruit orchard, they're vital. This lovely citrus flower will never become a lemon unless it's visited by a bee. And the stone fruit, which need cross-pollination, need heaps of bees there too. Sometimes the plants themselves aren't that attractive to bees, and you might have to do a bit of manipulation. For instance, you would put another flowering shrub or plants nearby, which is very attractive to the bees and flowers at the same time. That will get the bees into the area, and the bees, while they're there, might as well pollinate the fruit tree for you. So overall, I guess you'd say that bees are pretty good things to have around, but you've got to look after them. And that means if you have to spray insecticide, make sure that you choose the mildest one possible and only spray late in the evening once the bees have packed up for the day and gone home. So if you haven't got bees in your garden, you should encourage them by putting in the right plants. And if you have got them there already, then please look after them. They'll certainly reward you. You'll get much better crops on both your fruit trees and also in the vegetable garden, and there are other rewards as well. This material. Delicious.
Every gardener, if they're down on their hands and knees scrubbling in the garden, will end up with creaky knees like I've got. To protect your knees in your old age, certainly use some rubber foam, because that's really good protection for your knees. And if you want something a bit more upmarket, try these ones. Padded knees, easy to apply with the old Velcro tape, and I could walk for miles in these.
I don't know about you, but I find sitting by water like this very relaxing, listening to the sound of the running water and a lovely lily pond in front of me. I could just sit here for hours. And there's no doubt about it that water lilies are just one of the most beautiful aquatic plants around. And I think they're worth a closer look. Basically, there are 3 types of water lilies, and they're all nymphaea species. This is the miniature or pygmy variety, and this is Helvola. And the miniatures are terrific because they'll grow in very small ponds. In fact, they need less than 300 mils depth of water. But most people, when they think about water lilies, think of these hardy varieties because they'll grow in most places in Australia. This is a beautiful double white called Gonia, and it's a really vigorous grower. But there's lots of others. This is Hollandia, a lovely double pink, and just look at the beautiful red in this one called Escarbougle. And the last group are the tropicals. And whilst they'll grow in a large part of Australia, they don't like the cold weather. But that's okay. If the leaves start to die back in winter, you can lift the bulb and put it in some wet sand in a warm place, and then plant it out again in spring. This is a beautiful tropical called Blue Triumph. And look at this lovely St. Louis gold. But if you can, grow the tropicals and the hardies together, because the hardies will start flowering first and then the tropicals will follow on, and that gives you a very long flowering time. So what's the best way of growing a water lily? Well, in a backyard pond situation, there's no doubt about it, growing it in a pot like this is definitely the best way, because you can clean out your pond easily and you can repot if you need to. So every couple of years you should take it out and have a look. If you've just got roots coming out the bottom of it like this, you don't need to worry. But here, this plant needs repotting because it's got, not only has it got another plant growing here, but the crown of this plant is growing into the side of the pot. So we're going to divide it and it'll give us another plant. It's very simple. First of all, we'll just have to get rid of those roots now. Knock it out of the pot. And then simplicity itself. Just get a sharp knife and cut. Just straight through. Now, if you're buying a water lily by mail order, that's what you'll get, a bare-rooted plant. Or you can even buy them from the nurseries like that. They're $3 or $4 cheaper. Now, to repot it up, well, first of all, we're just going to have to wash off that soil and then we'll put it into a new container. Potting it up is simplicity itself. Just line the pot with some newspaper first and then put a little bit of soil down the bottom and mix in some manure or something similar. This is blood and bone and dynamic lifter mixed together. Then put the plant in the pot and fill around it with the soil. A garden soil is fine, but add some river sand, coarse river sand, to lighten it up a bit. And then make sure that the top of the plant, the crown of the plant, is above the level of the soil. And then simply put some decorative gravel around the top to make it look good. If you haven't got a pond in your garden to grow water lilies, don't worry. You can grow them in a lovely little pot like this. Here are some pygmies growing beautifully, and they need no care because they've got a fish like this growing in the water, eating the mosquito larvae, and a lovely oxygenating plant like this Ambulia, which is adding oxygen to the water. And then you've got a beautiful self-sustaining water garden.
Water gardens are beautiful, aren't they? But there's a trap. and it's in the form of a particularly deadly weed. It's called the water hyacinth, and it's so bad it started to run rampant in some parts of Australia, and in Africa it's destroyed entire river systems. So watch out for it. Don't be tricked by its pretty flowers. If you have it in your water garden, you've got to get rid of it, and you don't just dump it in the bush or even leave it in the corner to rot. It's got to be destroyed effectively by fire. And if you're caught with it, you can be given a very hefty fine. And now at last, the winner of the Greening Australia Tree Care Awards.
This year, the 1991 ABC Greening Australia Tree Care Awards have the theme of Catchments of Green. Gardening Australia and Greening Australia are jointly presenting the annual Tree Care Awards, awards which seek to recognise Australians, both individuals and community groups, that have sought to plant trees and establish vegetation along creeks and rivers all around the country to improve water quality as well as improve the productivity of those areas adjacent to them. Tonight's the culmination of what we've been showing you over the last 5 weeks for the 1991 ABC Gardening Australia, Greening Australia Annual Tree Care Awards. And inside the Adelaide Convention Centre here, some 250 guests are speculating as to which of those 16 finalists have won the big award. The 12 finalists that we didn't get a chance to see are the highly commended category, the Belgian Gardens State School in Queensland, ISIS District State School High School and ISIS Land Care Committee in Queensland, Kevin Dawn and Christopher Box are farmers from Pengelly in Western Australia, the Cairns Mulgrave Hill Slopes Protection Committee in Queensland, Rockler North Parra River Catchment in South Australia, KJ Miller, a farmer from Narrabeen in Western Australia, South Tamman Sub-Catchment Group in Western Australia, Gogong Foreshores in the ACT, Jonathan and Vicky Taylor of Kentucky, New South Wales, Hall Primary Junior Land Care Group in the ACT, Ron and Claire Dadd, farmers of North and Western Australia, and the Blackbutt Reserve Project in New South Wales. Well, our guests appear to have gone inside, so we'd better go and join them. And while we're doing that, we'll just review those 4 finalists that Gardening Australia have had a look over the last 4 weeks.
It's an opportunity for Alcoa to put something back into the community by providing resources and experience from its mining rehabilitation activities. The idea is that with our resources, farmers in these 6 catchment groups will be able to tackle their land degradation issues faster. And we're doing that not because their problems are any different to anybody else's, but so that these 6 groups can act as demonstration sites to the hundreds of other farmers within the wheatbelt area.
The aim of the project is to actually restore the bushland and continue to manage it in such a way that it remains a viable area for wildlife habitat. So there's a range of things happening here, including tree planting, weed control, community education, taking people on possum prowls of an evening and that sort of thing.
Fortunately, there is a core of hard-working people that have all pitched in, helped with tree planting and helped with weed removal, and we've achieved a lot in a short space of time.
The volunteers are absolutely essential to the success of the program, and we're fortunate here to have a fairly active community who are prepared to come along and work at Working Bees in various different ways, whether it's weed removal or tree planting.
This overgrown creek's just outside Malanda, and the tree planting scheme's rebuilding the original rainforest vegetation that grew here.
People were keen to see something done about the problems along this creek, and as soon as we possibly could, we started action. Instead of just picking off a small section of one creek, this project aims to try and revegetate this creek system from its source at the top of the catchment right back to where it enters the Johnson River.
We had quite a few problems, including salinity and waterlogged areas, and we just decided we had to do something rather than just talk about it. So we planted trees in areas to use up that water, and then gradually we've gone up the slope in the catchments, and we're into windbreaks and even managing that country. It's not just planting trees, this catchment planning idea.
We're using the soil type or the contour areas to put windbreaks in, and the windbreaks were protecting the stock and also protecting the crops.
And the winner is the Wet Tropics Tree Planting Scheme by the Shire Council of Eacham in North Queensland. Accepting the award on behalf of the Itchen Shire Council is Mark Heaton.
It's worked out really well. We've had a hell of a lot of work done by local residents along this Davies Creek project that we've carried out, and it's been a success because of the work that people have been prepared to put in themselves, actually get off their backsides and do something, and I think Australia-wide it's needed right now. Thanks very much.
Here we have an example of the kind of planting that's taken place in this scheme. The aim is to have the whole 4 to 5 kilometres of this creek planted out just like this. These were planted in September and they've done very well. So obviously their species selection's spot on. This is going to be a magnificent rainforest in just a few years' time.
Well, as you've seen, the most worthy recipient, the Shire of Itchen, North Queensland. Congratulations, Mark. You must feel very proud of those, redundant timber workers not so long ago, planting back the very forest which might show them some return in years to come.
Definitely. I think they're a group of people who have been able to take up the challenge of trying to recreate what, as you've seen, is a really complex ecosystem, and I hope their work goes on into the future.
We certainly do too. The 1991 Tree Care Awards have been an example of excellence in tree planting right across the country. It's a pity we can't have 16 winners, but that's the way it is, and congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly congratulate Mark Heaton and the Itchen Shire Council on a wonderful effort. This is the kind of thing which inspires people everywhere to join together to help repair our damaged land. Now, next week, we're going to show you how to make your own effective organic pesticides. Let's keep things safe the natural way. You'll see how to landscape and plant around a swimming pool. This is landscaping with a difference. And you'll see for yourself ways to make the greatest of all fertilisers, compost. And we'll show you how to use it to keep your soil healthy and fertile. Don't miss this one. Well, there you are. Muck, recycling and lots of pretty flowers. We'll see you next week. This week we'll show you how to make your own effective organic pesticides. They're not only safe, but they're cheap to make too. You'll find out how to landscape around the swimming pool. This is garden design with a difference. And the greatest of all natural fertilisers. It's compost. We'll show you how to make it by recycling waste. This is the organic way. Hello and welcome to the programme. Have you ever realised just what a marvellous gardening climate we have in this country? Here it's so large we can just about grow anything, and yet our tastes in food and particularly vegetables are still fairly conservative. Later on we're going to show you some lovely, unusual and delicious vegetables, and you never know, you might be tempted to try growing them yourself. But first of all, let's wander through a beautiful native garden.
On the road again, just can't wait to get on the road again.
There's something very special about driving in the Australian bush. It's the vegetation, it's the dirt roads, the smell of the blue gums or the peppermint gums, the sound of the birds. It's all very special.
Going places that I've never been.
And that's why very many people like to grow native plants in their own garden. It just brings in that feeling of the bush into their own home garden. There's a lot of people these days who are growing European-style cottagey plants, and that's a very popular method of gardening. But native gardens should be equally as popular because they are so special. The plants are very unique.
On the road again.
And I'm just going to pull in here because this is the Tyalgi native garden. It's a really beautiful 2 acres of garden filled with native plants, and this shows you how special they are. Up the driveway, which has been made of locally collected stone put on a concrete base, and you've got this fantastic array of colour as you come into the garden, filled with kangaroo paws, just looking great. I can already hear the sound of birds to greet us. We'll take a little look because this garden has got a lot of elements in it. Good design, using beautiful plants, and it really is a fantastic thing to have a little look at. It looks terrific. Nice and green at this time of the year, and there's certainly a lot flowering. Like any style of garden, a native one should be thought about and really constructed properly, perhaps with the idea of screening parts off, using plants like Westringias or the native mint bushes, both which bring the birds and they flower for such a long time. This garden's filled with colour at many seasons, and this one here is a beauty. It's the Actinotus helianthi, or the Sydney flannel flower. Its petals are very soft to touch. It's one of those plants that grows in the sun to about 50 centimetres, and they just love being in poor, gravelly soil. Another good plant to provide colour all year is this dwarfed form of the kangaroo paw. It's Anicoxanthus rufus, rufus meaning red, and what a delightful colour that is. It flowers for such a long time. How often do you hear that all native plants are prickly? Well, not so. Even this hakea, ow, it is prickly, but it does have a very fine effect. And the thing is, you do in a garden, make a contrasting feature right next door to it. Beautiful Darwinia citriodora with lemon-scented foliage, and have a look at those orange claw-like flowers there. It's the contrast of the foliage and the form that you get. And speaking of form, look at this magnificent Banksia, upright, erect branches, and just looks terrific. Banksia serrata is known as because of its very serrated leaves. But it's the flowers that you really want to look at. These cones are enormous, and the birds love to come for the nectar. When the flowers finish, you end up with the old cones, and they'll remind you exactly of those Banksia men from May Gibbs's stories. There's no such thing as a no-maintenance garden. Every garden has to be cut back and pruned, and of course the ones that have had the gong you need to pull out. That one's gone, but I'm going to replace it with this one in a goodly hole that'll fill up the gap perfectly well. When you're planting a native plant, put a little bit of slow-release fertiliser in the bottom. No other fertiliser is needed, if at all. Now, when you're picking a native plant, select it that's small. Don't go for the really big ones because the small ones actually always catch up to the big ones in the end. Oh, this one needs to be planted out, no problem. Put it in the hole and then backfill it and use the mulch that you've got around you. A bit of eucalyptus mulch makes the garden look really soft and beautiful. And you'll bring the worms in also. Just pack that around like that, and then a good bucket of water, and that should give the plant enough water for a long time. You certainly won't have to go back and water that. I like to give my native plants a good cutback when you first of all plant it, because that will keep them compact. So be secateurs happy. Go out there with your native plants and really make use of your secateurs. Have a look at this fine Western Australian flowering gum. They've chosen to grow it here in Gippsland. But if you want a native garden, you might like to choose Indigenous species to your area. Whatever you do, think and plan carefully, and if you end up with a garden as beautiful as the Tyalgi native gardens, you're doing well.
Often when you use pesticides or herbicides, you mix up too much, and there's the problem of what to do with the surplus. Please don't pour chemicals down drains, because eventually they flow into our rivers and oceans, causing pollution. The concentration is diluted, but many chemicals bioaccumulate in marine organisms. Sydney and Melbourne have chemical collection sites, and you can ring the water board in those cities to find out when and where the collections take place. Obviously, you should only mix up the quantity of pesticide that you need. Disposal's not an easy problem for anyone, however, and we as individuals must take responsibility for our actions.
If you're tired of the same old veggies, why not try something a little bit different in your garden next year? Well, how do you know what to try? Here's a suggestion. Go to the fruit shop, or better still, go to the markets and see what's being grown, see whether you like it, and then try it in your own garden. Now, we're at the markets, and at this time of year, most of the vegetables are in the cucurbit family, things like pumpkins, squash, zucchini. Let's begin with the pumpkins. This little thing is called sweet dumpling. Look at the size, it's perfect. The plant's fairly big, mind you, and inside, not too many seeds and a lovely lemon flesh, which is a little bit sweet in flavour. But if you want something that's more of a conventional pumpkin colour on the outside, try minikin. A very productive small plant, produces masses of these. Inside, not too many seeds, but overall not very large, but an ideal single-serve portion size. If, however, you like the more conventional pumpkins, but don't want something as big as a Queensland blue, then try Golden Nugget. This would be a medium-sized one. Plenty of flesh inside, not too many seeds, lovely flavour, keeps fairly well too with a good hard outside. An alternative, which the looks of which anyway appeal to a lot of people, is Potkin, this particular fella. Now, Potkin unfortunately has an awful lot of seeds, but the flesh that is there is certainly very nice tasting indeed. From the pumpkins onto the squashes. And what is the difference, you may ask? Well, I'm blowed if I know sometimes, but generally we regard the soft skin ones to be squashes. This would be one of them, known as vegetable spaghetti. Doesn't look much now, but comes into its own after you've cooked it, taken the seeds out of the inside and scraped the flesh with a fork, and it comes out like spaghetti. Interesting looking, the flavour, not crash hot, but nonetheless a conversation piece at the dinner table certainly. The vine grows very easily, as do all the squashes, but these are summer squashes and they don't keep well. So if you grow a lot of plants, you're going to find yourself eating a lot of things like this, a button squash, a green one. Tasty, but you might like a different colour. Lovely little size, these fellas. This is the golden or the yellow button squash. Again, very tasty, but the best one of the whole lot is the acorn squash. Now, this is superb in flavour and a lovely appearance too. Only producing, of course, during the warmer months of the year, as do all of these, so you can grow them all year round in the tropics, but as you move further south, your growth season severely restricted until you get into late spring, summer, down in the very cold parts indeed. Gem squash, a little bit larger, different, lots of seeds in that. Let's move to the zucchinis. Gosh, there's lots of those. Or courgettes, perhaps you might call them. This is a really good one. Yes, I know it's small, but that's the size at which they should be picked. If you leave them for a week longer than that, you'll land up with a monster like this, for zucchinis are marrows in disguise. Now, this still has the flavour, not so much of it, but you get a little sick of eating it after a while, and those are superb. If you want a different colour, very much the same thing. This is one of the golden zucchinis. Easy to grow plants. The bush is easy to manage. Full sun, free draining like all the cucurbits, and they will grow like mad. Now, something a little bit different. This is celeriac. Sounds like and is like celery, except we don't grow it for the leaves. These are pretty awful. We grow it for this swollen root. It takes about 20 to 25 weeks to get to this size. Just use the root alone, as a veggie, any way you see fit, or in soups for flavouring. A different flavour, sweet, nutty, a little bit turnip, parsnip in it too. And lastly, something that's not really a veggie, but is sold as such. This is okra, or lady's fingers. What it actually is the seed pod of a hibiscus flower. You sow the seeds, it takes about 4 months for the plants to grow up to 2 metres high. They flower, and 2 or 3 days later, you've got these. And there's a sticky substance on the inside. It certainly is different indeed. So there you are, a range of different veggies, which hopefully will tickle your palate now, and you can try growing next year.
You probably noticed in your stores where you buy all your fertilisers, stuff called fish emulsion. It's actually fermented leftovers, seafood scraps, shrimps, prawns, all that sort of stuff. It's fermented. It's a great additive to sandy soils, gives it all those minor enzymes and trace elements that leach out of sand very quickly. Comes in bottles, stinks like something terrible. Don't do this to your indoor plants. 1 capful to 4 litres like that in a container. Water it in outside, keep your dogs and cats away, and your plants will jump out of the ground.
Now, I don't know what you think of this house behind me, but it looks pretty bland and boring, doesn't it? And the owners know that they need some landscaping to tie it all together. But what do? Well, the very first step before you do any planting is to draw up a plan. And they had this plan done, which showed exactly what they were going to do and where. And around the front of the house, they wanted to put a pool in. Now, this is a concept plan. In fact, the pool has now been built as a first step. But this initial stage of drawing up a plan is important. Let's go and see what they did. Well, we're walking down the side of the house now, and in front of us is the pool area, and it looks fabulous, doesn't it? Now, these people decided to have a more formal sort of look, and everything is in keeping with that look. But whatever look you decide, you might want a tropical look or something else. Keep to that style once you've decided on it. Now, this is actually a sloping block. Hard to believe, but you can see the level difference when you actually go down into the pool area. Look at these lovely rustic sandstone steps, and the thing about them is that the edge matches the semicircle of the steps that lead down into the pool. And I don't want you to think that this is a very expensive landscape, because most of the materials used are pretty standard. This is pebblecrete in the pool and clay pavers around the edge. But there are a couple of things which set this landscape apart, and that's the sandstone and also these really beautiful tiles which are around the edge of the pool. Planning is certainly the key to success in any landscape, and the thing that was important here was getting the levels right. Now, we could have been standing right up here so the top of the pool was level with the base of the house, but that would have meant an even bigger retaining wall on the other side, and you would have been seen from the street when you were walking around the pool. This is a really nice height retaining wall because you can sit on it, and they cheated a little bit just over here. This lovely broom brush fence has actually got 3 rows of bricks below it, which you can see from the footpath, but it acts as a retaining wall here for the soil. You can't see it because of these lovely impatiens which are put in as a temporary measure, while these Camellia sasanquas, which are planted all the way along here, grow up as a formal screen. And you can see down this end of the pool just how far the land drops away, but it's hidden by both the fence and the planting. Plants really can be used to terrific effect in the landscape, and this tibbicina, which will grow up to a small tree, will hide the fact that the fence dips down in this corner. And similarly, this plumbago has been mass planted to hide the bank, and it will eventually grow up to the top of the fence height. The mass planting will tie in very nicely with the line of camellias, but also the informality of the plumbago will fit in with the cottage plants which the owner wanted planted along the top of the retaining wall. Down this end of the garden, Japanese maples have been planted to give some height, but also some summer shade. And although they're deciduous, at least they only lose their leaves at one time of the year. All trees lose their leaves at some time. And because a plan was done, it was known that there was nowhere else in the garden to put citrus trees. So this lemon has been put in here, and that's okay because the glossy green leaves still fit in very nicely with the camellias. But certainly the statues are the pièce de résistance of this garden because they tie it all together and they make it a really very pleasant place to be. I think this is a really lovely pool area, and even though it may not be to your taste, I'm sure you'll agree that it works really well, and it works because it's been very well planned.
Now, if you want more information about planning and landscaping around a pool, you'll find it all in the April edition of the Gardening Australia magazine, and it's crammed with practical information for you about gardening. Now look, if you can't get it, or you want to have it regularly, why not subscribe? It's dead easy. All you have to do is ring this toll-free number. It's 008 800 933 and we'll fix it for you. But pests are a problem in the garden, aren't they? You can get rid of them the safe way by making your own pesticides. That's the organic way.
You know, the word garden is derived from the word paradise, and being in a nice garden is just about like being in paradise. But of course, gardens are not just paradise for people. In a garden like this, there are likely to be lots and lots of insects as well. If you want to keep your garden looking nice and free of insects, you're often going to have to spray with something. Not everyone likes to spray with chemicals. There are some organic methods of pest control that you can use. Here we've got the basic ingredients for a good all-round insecticide. I've got 2 chopped up onions, skins and all, it doesn't matter how roughly they're chopped up. I've got a clove of garlic already cut up and 2 hot chilies nearly cut up. And it's important that they be pretty hot. The hotter they are, the better. Now each of these ingredients are good insecticides in their own right, but when they're combined together, they enhance each other's operation. Tip it all into the container, like so. The next step is to cover all the ingredients with soapy water. Now it's important to use soap, like these soap flakes or bar soap, not detergent. Just mix it up in the water, there's plenty there, give it a shake up, and then tip the whole lot over the ingredients. And leave it steep for 24 hours. Don't do anything with it for the next 24 hours. Here we've got a brew that I made up 24 hours ago. All that has to happen to this now is to strain off the solid bits through a pair of pantyhose or something like that, add another 2.5 litres of water, and you've got your liquid insecticide. You can store this for weeks, but don't forget to put a label on it. You know, there's nothing worse than biting into a beautiful piece of fruit and finding those beastly fruit flies have beaten you to it. Here we have the basic raw materials for effectively repelling fruit flies. There's kerosene, we've got mothballs, we've got a glass jar that I'm going to mix it in, and we've got some creosote. Normally you would use a litre of kerosene, you would use half a packet of mothballs and a litre of creosote, but we're only going to use a small amount of each. First step is to put the kerosene in the jar, so. Then the mothballs go in, and lastly the creosote. Like so. That's about the relationship. All that remains to be done now is to transfer the liquid from your original container into tins. And of course, you're going to have a lot more than I've got because you're going to use a litre of kerosene, a litre of creosote, and half a packet of mothballs. So you'll mix all that up into a bucket, transfer it out of the bucket into tins, and hang those tins around your fruit tree. But make sure you hang them where you're not going to hit your head on them or spill the stuff over yourself. And with a smell like that, it's going to keep the fruit fly away, believe me.
If your kangaroo paws are looking a bit tatty after flowering, now's the time to lift them and divide them. What you do first of all is to shear the top off, taking care to leave the new growth, then lift the whole lot with a fork, look for an obvious division along the rhizome and using a sharp knife cut it cleanly into good-sized clumps like this one, and then replant them in a sunny, well-drained position and definitely at the same soil level. More flowers next year.
Isn't this a marvellous pumpkin patch? Look, there are pumpkins everywhere and they're magnificent. But do you know why they've succeeded? Because they've been grown with the greatest of all fertilisers, and that's compost. But let's dispel a myth straight away. Compost isn't just nothing more than garden debris that's been allowed to rot down. That's not compost. It's not bad, but it's full of weed seeds. No, compost is made in a special way. One day, you're going to look around and find enough of these piles of debris lying around to be able to say, I'm going to make some compost at last. Look at that lovely brew. Now, what I've done, I've managed to acquire this delicious pea straw. Isn't it fantastic? I've wet it, and I'm going to make it as the basis of a freestanding heap, and it's dead easy. The secret of getting a compost heap to heat up is to have lots of room. In other words, you put it right on the soil for a start, and have the base of it at least 1.5 metres by 1.5 metres. So they're big. If it's any smaller, it won't get hot. It hasn't got the bulk. And you can make it into a neat square like that, but just put the stuff down, the basic material, whether it's straw or whatever, to a depth of about 200 millimetres. That's about 8 inches. But the greater the number of ingredients, the better the compost. Look at that. These are grass clippings and vegetable waste. And look at this stuff here, seaweed. Absolutely marvellous because it's absolutely crammed with trace elements. And compost loves it. Remember that anything that once lived can live again in a compost heap. This is natural fibre, it's cotton. They're fantastic, they'll soon rot down. Old nappies, they'll really get it going. And people worry about newspapers. Look, they're very good for the compost heap, but get rid of any with coloured print. And the stuff, I've already wet this, I tear it up like that. It breaks down much more effectively. And you can put that in the heap and just bury it in there so it won't blow around. It'll soon be buried completely anyway, like that there. There we are. But this little lot's not going to rot down very quickly or even get hot. It needs fuel. And the best fuel of all is animal manure containing plenty of nitrogen. This is sheep manure. A thin layer over the surface like that. That's marvellous. But there's one that's even better. And that's poultry manure. That's full of nitrogen. A good dollop of this right over the heap, and I can feel it starting to throb slightly already. I'm going to put some pepper and salt into this nutritious pie. Look at this. Lovely chicken pellets, aren't they beautiful? That's marvellous. But there's more. Yes, you've guessed it. It's inevitable. Blood and bone. Look at that. Beautiful, isn't it? That's absolutely crammed with nitrogen. But there's one more. This stuff here. My God, it stinks. It's fish meal. It's got the most revolting smell, but compost heap, they love it. And now the most important ingredient of all, the water. It is absolutely essential. And what you do, you literally saturate the whole thing, and you do that at every stage. From now on, it's nothing more than a repeat of the same process. A layer of the basic raw materials, then seaweed, then the manures, then the fertilisers, and always a good saturating watering. It's so important. And just keep building up the heap, adding the different layers, and eventually, when it's big enough or when you've exhausted the materials, you'll finish up with what looks like a magnificent chocolate layer cake, but infinitely more nutritious. Now, even if this heap was left completely undisturbed, it would still heat up quite dramatically in 3 or 4 days and then gradually cool down. Within what, 1, 2 or 3 months, you'd have a wonderful core of superb compost. But if you wanted to hasten the process, all you do is pull this whole heap apart every 3 days, keeping it watered, and form another heap all the time, and that means that the whole lot can be converted into compost in less than a month if you want to. Now, if you think all this is a bit hard, and it's not really, you can obtain one of these lidded compost bins. They come in all shapes and sizes, and honestly, they're absolutely fantastic. Look at this here. You can use not only your kitchen scraps, but also your tea and coffee grains, keep them watered, and you can see how full that is there. Look, the method of decomposition is much different than the open heap, and what it will do, it'll rot down very rapidly indeed, so much so that it's almost impossible to keep them full. They have a very good, tight, fly-proof lid. There it is, and in fact the rats and mice can't get in the bottom because of the sheer weight of the whole thing. But there's even more significant methods of making compost. This is the wonderful compost tumbler. They cost about $400 and they're worth every cent. They're absolutely marvellous. All you do is you put in your kitchen scraps, a bit of water, your grass clippings, and every day you turn them around like this a few times, about 5 times. At the end of 2 weeks, open up the hatch, it comes off quite freely, give it a complete turn, like that, and out drops this gorgeous brew ready for the garden. Isn't it lovely? And finally, you can't go past the good old side support compost bin. They don't have to be so large. In fact, if they're small, they can still retain the heat because of the supporting sides. But no matter which method of making compost that you use, you still get this fantastic stuff. There it is, compost, the greatest of all fertilisers. It's so good you can put it on your muesli in the morning.
Acacia pendula, the weeping mile. It's an ideal small tree, especially for an arid area with a very sparse canopy. It grows 6 to 10 metres tall, silvery pendulous foliage that reflects light at night, so it's ideal to plant along a driveway. They'll tolerate up to about -6 degrees in frost and an annual rainfall as low as 375 millimetres. Hardy tree with a long life, unlike some of the shrubby acacia species. The growth's a bit slow at first, but after about 3 years it really takes off. and it's a good weed suppressant. Very little weed competition ever intrudes underneath the plant. Has small flowers in July, September, and I love it. Acacia pendula, the weeping mile.
Now, by the way, and you're not going to believe this, that compost heap you saw me building, that was a week ago. Within 3 days, it had heated up so much, it virtually exploded. It was squirting steam everywhere. It was wonderful. I've never seen a more active compost heap. It's going to make a lovely brew. You can do it too, providing you're willing to put up with all these funny squirts and bumps in the night. Now, next week, we'll show you the remarkable benefits of different types of edging, how to make your garden both attractive and easy to care for. You'll see a range of delicious and nutritious oriental vegetables. You can grow them in your own garden. And we'll take you on a delightful tour of another outstanding botanic garden. This one's in the heart of Brisbane, and it's absolutely unforgettable. Well, there you are, a practical, delicious and beautiful programme. We'll see you next week. This week, it's our Christmas special. You'll meet a remarkable lady who turns pressed flowers into works of art. You'll also see how some of Australia's most flamboyant tropical grevilleas are bred and grafted. And we're taking you through an astonishing garden. It's created entirely from bromeliads, and they're absolutely superb. Hello and welcome to the programme, and we hope you're having the most marvellous Christmas, especially the children. Now, in a remote part of the east coast of Tasmania is a beautiful old property with a superb garden, and that's part of our Christmas treat for you. We're also going to show you how to make wreaths from garden materials. But first of all, let's meet an extremely talented lady.
Flowers are wonderful things. They really have happy memories for you of good times and places and friends. But fresh flowers are very fleeting. They come and go. But there's a way that you can keep the memory of them to last for a very long time. And that's by picking flowers to press. Not only the flowers, but the leaves are perfect to press. It's an age-old custom and one that I enjoy doing very much. You should pick the flowers when the sun's not on them, because the sun can bleach the colour, or just after the dew's gone off them, and you'll find that it's such a wonderful thing to do. When you've picked your flowers, make sure you press them fairly quickly, and if you're a learner, start out with an old telephone directory or a thick encyclopedia or something like that. All you need to do is open up the pages, and with a bit of absorbent paper, like a tissue or blotting paper, put your flowers down, and these are little Johnny jump-ups that I pressed about 2 weeks ago, and they come up really well. Things like the violas and pansies with their little flat faces do look really good. And all you need to do is just lay it down quite flat like that, and then close the book, and you'll find that that'll press just very nicely. And why not a simple flower press for children? It's a lovely gift idea, just made of 2 bits of heavy-duty wood, and then the same principle applies, absorbent paper, and here I've pressed some rather lovely maidenhair fern leaves. You can use fern leaves or any sort of delicate leaves if you like, not just flowers. And the thing is that they've got a bit of cardboard and the absorbent paper, and how you keep it all together is just simple. The old bolt and wing nut in each corner, and that tightens the whole thing up. It's great if you're travelling around and you've got something portable that you can press your flowers into. I've used this old antique tie press for years. It just opens up like so. I'm going to press this dear little flower, lovely little yellow one. It's actually a creeping oxalis. It's a weed, but it'll press very neatly. I've shown you the layperson's method of pressing flowers, but here Liliane Miel makes pressed flower pictures that are really works of art. She starts the picture by carefully arranging the material with her design in mind. She starts from the outside so that there's an overall look about the picture. Building up the middle of the picture is next. It's very delicate work. You need to have lots of patience and handle the plants oh so gently. Liliane sees if the picture is well balanced and carefully glues the flowers or leaves on using craft glue. When she's happy, she then puts some padding underneath the silk or satin. You don't have to do this if you're using paper or card. Next, a spotlessly clean piece of glass, and finally the frame. For a complex picture, it could take you up to 8 hours of work. It's all in the design. Well, that's how the experts do it. But if you want something a little bit personal with a birthday card or a letter, it's really nice to have a few pressed flowers in the corner. And of course, if you've got a wedding bouquet, there's something really special to press. So go out in the garden and start pressing on regardless.
If your hands look like this at the end of the day, well, there might be a handy cleaner out in the fruit orchard. What you need first of all, though, is a little bit of sugar, and then pinch a lemon off the tree and squeeze a generous amount of lemon juice on top of that. Then work it up into a nice lather. And the last thing, well, just wash it off with water. There we are, nice and clean and lemon fresh too.
Can you guess where we are? Well, I'll tell you. These fine old buildings are in a remote part of Tasmania's east coast. They're part of the rich colonial heritage of Australia, but they're also surrounded by a most extraordinary but rather wild garden. The property is called Mayfield, and this fine old house was built between 1820 and 1830. It's all part of an estate of about 5,000 hectares, producing fine quality merino wool, I think the best in the world. But when Thomas Buxton first came here in 1823, he first built a sod hut, and that was later developed into the house. The garden, well, that came later. It now includes some fine old trees, including a Moreton Bay fig, which is quite rare in Tasmania. You know, it's wonderful to wander through an old garden like this. I like the way it's been allowed to run wild around the old bakehouse. This is one of the original buildings, and you can see the shingle roof. But it was here that the bread was baked. They also used to grind the wheat that was grown on the property here. And in fact, here are the old grinding stones. This is now a picnic table, but it all started at the old mill. Of course, the old building hasn't been used for grinding wheat for donkey's ages, and yet the building's still in sound condition. But the evidence of the enormous activity that went on 150 years ago, well, it's here. Here's the old mill race. There's the remains of the old mill wheel and its shaft there. And you can even see the evidence here, cut into the actual sandstone of the mill wheel as it was going round and round. And as for the hard-working miller, Well, he probably planted this lovely old mulberry tree. But he and his family lived in here. This is the miller's cottage, a lovely old building. It's still quite sound on the outside. But inside, unfortunately, it's become quite derelict. But I know one thing. I reckon they had a fantastic lifestyle. But apart from growing wheat around here, they also grew hops. And that explains the hop kilns. They don't build buildings like this anymore. This one's created from the local stone, and you can see how attractive it is. And of course, it's no longer used for hops. It's used simply for storage purposes. But you can see how roomy they are inside. In fact, they needed all this space to be able to accommodate the drying racks. But there's no doubt about it, it was a very busy place and the labourers worked extremely hard. And the hop workers, where did they live? Well, they lived here in this row of cottages. There are 6 two-room flats, I suppose you can call them. It must have been fairly crowded, but there's no doubt about it. I reckon they were comfortable in those days. Since then, the building's been completely renovated. There are people living here, and they've created the most wonderful cottage garden. There's only one word that can describe a garden like this, and that's enchanting. But this is the only type of garden that would suit a building like this. And there are flowers everywhere, chrysanthemums. There's even a hydrangea there with it still in its pink flowers. And of course, lots and lots of marguerite daisies. It's a wonderful garden, and of course, what can you expect? A beautiful bear's breech, one of the ancient gardening plants, Acanthus mollis. I couldn't imagine a more superbly beautiful boundary to a property than here at Mayfield with this lovely beach and the sea. But what does it all prove? Look, it's quite simple. We have a wonderful, rich history of lovely old homes and gardens, and we ought to preserve and protect them.
I'm at the Fairhill Gardens in Yandina, southeastern Queensland, and I've got to tell you, I'm just knocked out by these tropical grevilleas. Exquisite plants that have been bred and selected from some of the tropical grevilleas that thrive in this region. They're plants, of course, that are quite well adapted to southern gardens too, only they grow a little bit shorter and maybe not flower as long. But the thing that's critical with growing them in the tropics, of course, is to get very good drainage, otherwise your grevilleas will just peg out. If you want to keep your grevilleas thriving, keep the phosphates right away from them, because grevilleas all over the country can't cope with phosphates. In fact, keep most of the fertilisers away from them. A little bit of organic stuff here and there, fine. But this little grevillea is a gem called Superb. It's a cultivar bred by Merv Hodge, and it's a cross between the white flowering form of Banksai and Bipinnator feeder. I particularly like this because of those peachy colours and the fact that it flowers all year round, and in the southern states only grows to about 1 metre high. In the tropics, probably 2 metres, but it can be pruned very easily after flowering. That's pretty difficult because it flowers nearly all year round. Another of the Banksai hybrids, and this one's crossed with Cecilis, is Misty Pink, and I'd have to tell you the birds have just been busy in here all morning, burrowing into these beautiful pale pink sort of candelabra flowers as they're held aloft. You'll notice some of these tropical grevilleas have most of their flowers right on the tips, quite the opposite to a lot of the southern forms that keep the flower right in the heart of the bush. A very popular grevillea in the tropics is Honey Gem. It's a cross between Banksai and Terridifolia, which gives it that very fine foliage, well, certainly finer than Banksii, and it's a great target for the honey-eating birds that burrow into those terminal golden blooms early in the morning and late afternoon. Huge display of flowers right throughout the winter, grows to 4 or 5 metres and needs to be pruned back pretty hard. But don't go cutting it back into the wood that's any thicker than your little finger, otherwise it won't have the vigour to shoot out again. Sandra Gorton's one of those wispy sort of plants, lovely open habit. Its chief attraction is the sort of grey foliage. It's a cross between Terridifolia and Cecilis, and much paler yellow flowers, but certainly very popular with the honey-eating birds. Similarly needs to be pruned back pretty heavily after flowering too. I think one of the most stunning grevillea Banksai cultivars that grows on its own roots in the tropics is a cultivar called K. Williams. It's a cross between that yellow Sandra Gordon and a Banksai, and it has a lovely candy pink sort of flower, masses of them, and of course the birds love it too. The interesting thing about all these bankside cultivars that we've seen up to now is that they grow on their own roots, and that's the big difference between those and so many of the other grevilleas which people seek to grow in their gardens in Queensland, because so many of those are grown on grafted rootstocks. There's a whole range of tropical grevilleas that can only be grown in the garden because they're now grafted onto the rootstocks of the hardy tree Grevillea robusta, and these beds are good examples of those. One of the tropical grevilleas that grows into a small tree is Grevillea heliosperma. Delightful thing, carries all of its flowers right at the end of the branches in big clusters and goes on flowering right through the winter. One of the very best grevilleas for the tropics has got to be Longostyla. Unfortunately, it's one of those, when it grows on its own rootstock in a home garden where you put a lot of extra water on, you get this black sooty mould everywhere and it doesn't look very flash. But grafted onto the roots of Grevillea robusta, it thrives, and you can see these lovely panicles of flower. Magnificent plant. This is Grevillea magic lantern, and I think it's probably a cultivar of Thelmaniana, one of those grey woolly leaf varieties. It does very well in the dry areas of the country. And I'd be really surprised to see it growing here on its own rootstock, because I'm sure the humid conditions would kill it off, which is why they're grafted onto Grevillea robusta rootstocks here. Therein lies a lesson for the rest of the country. There are a lot of very good hardy native plants that ought to be grown more widely across a lot more gardens, grafted onto the rootstocks of local hardy native plants. Lesson for all of us, from Queensland to the states down south.
Isn't it amazing how these tropical plants produce the most flamboyant flowers? They light up any garden, but even the most drab materials from the garden can be used to make traditional decorations that go back a long way.
The craft of wreath making is steeped in history from cultures all around the world, and they're symbols of festive occasions as well as having a decorative role today. All over the world, people make garlands and circles for seasonal festivals, family celebrations, and to decorate their homes. Circles are a symbol of love, friendship, birth, even life itself. Wreath making is an ancient craft and recreates nature's own circles. The ancient Greeks made their wreaths out of laurel and olive and oak, and it really is an easy thing for you to do. In your own home, if you'd like to make a wreath to decorate your house, why not try some grapevine? As you're pruning your grapes, use the twining tendrils to make a wreath, and it's really easy. A wisteria is a good thing to do also. Now, this one here is actually made of lots of different kinds of barks and branches and twigs. You can see all the different colours, but it looks a really natural sort of effect. This one is of raffia, twines and plaids of raffia, which you can get quite easily at art and craft shops, and it really comes up well when you braid it together like that. For people who like to use a little bit more greenery, the green of ivy is a good thing to do, and you just twine that around, or you might like to use conifer foliage. And have a look at this very simple one here. That is just little twigs from a silver birch tree, and it's very attractive, very elegant, and something a little bit different, if a little simple. Using natural material is fine, but you might like to also go to a florist and get a simple piece of florist foam, and on that you can make that the base of your wreath, and then you can decorate the top of it. Only for a couple of dollars that'll cost you, and that's just fine. You'll find all sorts of materials available in your neighbourhood, and I've just been down to the creek to get some lengths of willow. It's a fine colour and it's very flexible, and it's great to use to make a base. All you do is hold it in your hand and make a circle with it. Depending on the size, it really depends on where you want to put the wreath. A large one for a wall or a smaller one for your table. Then you twine the ends around like so, just intertwine them round like that, and each little end can go into the other little bits, and it makes a perfect circle. Another bit will go round like that, and you can get it thicker so that you end up with something like that. It makes a perfect base for a wreath. Wreaths, or garlands as some people like to call them, are aesthetic as well as being functional. Here's a collection of autumn leaves, the yellows and the reds of the autumn leaves, wired on to the back of florist foam. That's a nice easy one to do, but very instant. You'd obviously have to change that. But have a look at this one for a bit of smell as well as visual appeal. In the bathroom, it's a wreath made of lemon verbena, and every time you crush a leaf of that you get the most fragrant smell. And for a harvesty sort of feel, there's the base of a wreath made of silver birch twigs, and using grasses like wheat or oats or rye or barley, anything that you can find, that would really come up well as an ornament or a decorative thing on top. Even dried flowers like lavender or pressed flowers that you might do, that can be glued onto the base of your wreath. From the veggie garden, don't forget to use colourful things like this. That's a beautiful wreath. That's really my favourite actually, because it really is so colourful. It's those red hot peppers. They look marvellous, but I wouldn't like to eat them. But you can imagine how effective they'd be on your kitchen wall. Marvellous. And this, for pure decoration for Christmas, for festive times, there's the Christmas one. Made of nuts, all sorts of nuts that you collect, with a red ribbon tied on. And what about a bit of silver or gold gilt? And that really does look great. But this one is the pièce de résistance. This is perfect to hang in your kitchen on the wall. It's a large wreath filled with herbs that you can use in your cooking. And this is a very usable one, because there you've got cinnamon sticks tied onto the base of the wreath. You've got bay leaves there that you could use in your stew. You've got rosemary there that you could use in all sorts of cooking. There's the cinnamon sticks again. And you've got chili peppers over here. And you come round to some thyme there. Now it's a very fragrant one, and look at this. There's a clove of garlic stuck on with some onions as well. And I think that's a marvellous wreath. It really looks terrific. So if you use your imagination and draw on the natural materials around you, you'll end up making a real treasure of a garland.
This old man's beard, or Spanish moss or tillandsia, call it what you like, it's got a great history. When Henry Ford first started building Model T Fords, he used the tillandsia to stuff the seats, and an industry developed in South America to grow it just for that purpose. But then old Henry discovered horses and he stuffed them with horsehair, and that was the end of the tillandsia industry. This is a member of the bromeliad family, just like the pineapple. Looks nothing like the pineapple, but tell me, have you ever seen a garden like this before? Gee, that's pretty, isn't it? Isn't that nice? Yeah.
That's another iview there.
Yeah.
Look at the flower on there.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that lovely?
I've honestly never seen a garden full of bromeliads in my life before, and I was lucky enough to be able to talk to the creator and the person who loves this garden enormously, Grace Good. Grace, what is it about neoregelias that you like the most?
I like them because of their diversity, their coloured leaves and their ease of culture, and they're so appropriate to use in landscaping.
What's the charm or appeal to you of bromeliads in general?
Because I can go away for months and leave them and they'll still look beautiful when I come back. They don't require much attention, but if you do give them attention, they repay you 1,000-fold.
Are they difficult to grow for the amateur, you know, the beginner?
No, very easy, but I'd advise a person to start on the easy ones first and gradually work up to gazmanias, which don't like the cold. They have to be grown in shade houses or glass houses. Gradually work up to the more cultured ones.
Setting up a bromeliad garden, the average person would only grow one or two. Do you grow all yours in pots?
Yes, they can grow equally well in the ground, but they like to send their roots horizontally. Whereas you put them in pots, they're forced to go to the side and then send their roots down.
How long have you been growing bromeliads?
About 25 years.
Somebody told me that you're probably one of the world's best known bromeliad growers.
Oh, spare my blushes. I've been hybridising for many years. When I first started, you couldn't get many bromeliads at all. Nobody knew what a bromeliad was. My mother had one, she called it the New Zealand lily. And I thought, strange, a lily, it hasn't got any bulbs. So I found out it was a Bilbergia pyramidalis, a lovely big pineapple lily sort of thing.
The puya came from Chile. It reminds me a bit of agaves or agaves and things like that, doesn't it?
Yes, it is, but it's very thorny, but they get the most gorgeous flowers. Some of them, like Puya ramondi, takes 400 years to bloom. To see it in bloom, you have to go to Chile to see it because it's been there for hundreds of years. But the natives there are chopping it down to make firewood and that for their fires now. So to see ramondi in bloom, well, it's belonging to the past now, but we just grow it because it's a beautiful looking plant. But without the cold climate, like it gets snow and everything up in the Andes, it won't flower here.
What sort of climatic zone do Neorogelias like?
We live in the pineapple industry, which is Mumbai, all around there. And of course, everybody knows that the pineapple is a bromeliad. And here, they like our subtropical climate. You need only 50% shade cloth, but with this greenhouse effect, I've had to put up 70.
Yeah.
And I find they do very well underneath that.
But you don't have to just live in the tropics to be able to grow bromeliads. That beautiful red flowered one.
They're the Vrishas, and the Vrishas will take the cold. And they grow at Sorrento in my friend's garden, and she grows them out under the trees, the cold wind and the rain on them. And she grows beautiful Vrishas, but they also will grow in the tropics. So the Vrisha is very versatile.
What sort of problems do you have with pests and diseases with bromeliads?
Not many. They do get scale, but they can be treated by spraying, except white oil. Never use white oil on bromeliads. It clogs the pores up, and bromeliads breathe through their leaves.
So if you use one of the systemic insecticides...
That's right. Dip them or you can spray them. I wouldn't say it was work hard. I'd say it was a labour of love. And it gives you so much pleasure to see this beauty around you every day. I think people who don't grow bromeliads are deprived.
When it comes to palms, there are literally thousands to choose from, but this would be one of my favourites. It's an Australian native, Icontophonix cunninghamiana, a mouthful of a name for a palm that's better known as the Bangalore or sometimes as the piccabean. It grows down the eastern coast, both in Queensland and New South Wales, and proves remarkably hardy to outside culture. In fact, it will tolerate almost full exposure to sun in many conditions. The extremely dry parts of the nation might stop it, but elsewhere it seems to be very happy. It'll grow to 20 or 25 metres high at maturity, but often in the gardens it doesn't get anywhere near that height. It stays at around 7 to 9 metres or so high. Certainly requires some summer water and appreciates a well-drained soil and a little bit of extra fertiliser. But it's such a wonderful shape and this lovely contrast between the leaves and the trunk. And the best bit of all, when it flowers, an added bit of magic to this butte palm.
Probably one of the most graceful and I think elegant of all the palms. Now, we're going to be back on New Year's Day, so we've got something extra special for you. It's a beautiful adventure garden and it's designed for children. This is the perfect playground and the kids love it. We'll also show you how to collect and sow seed and some transplanting and potting tricks. And we're taking you to one of the most beautiful places on earth. We're going to Tasmania's unique rainforest and you'll never forget this wild beauty. Don't miss this one. Have a safe and a wonderful Christmas and we'll see you next year.